Julie, you want me to kick it off?
Yes, please.
All righty then. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Montgomery County Delegation Priorities Hearing. This is an opportunity for our local officials, our city officials, and the public to share with the Montgomery County House and Senate delegation those things that they consider to be important and priorities for them as we go forward into the 2023 legislative session. I am Ben Kramer. I'm chairing the Montgomery County Senate delegation. I am here with the outstanding new chair of the House delegation, Delegate Julie Polakovich-Carr. I would like to say thank you to Delegate Mark Corman for the incredible job that he has done as chair of the House delegation for the past 4 years. I have been very impressed with his professionalism and all that he has brought to the table as chair. So thank you for that, Delegate Corman. The House chair will let everybody know what the rules of the road are and how the proceedings will go forward. And with that, I will turn it over to Chair Polakovich-Carr.
Thank you so much, Chair Kramer. And I too will echo our collective thanks to our now former chair, Mark Corman, for his hard work and service over the past 4 years, as well as to former vice chair of the delegation, Al Carr. I will let folks know, because I know hordes of people tuned in for our delegation meeting last Thursday night, that in addition to my election as chair, Delegate Emily Shetty is our new vice chair for the delegation. And our House Democratic Caucus has elected Delegates Lily Chee and Vaughn Stewart as the co-chairs for the Democratic Caucus. And we look forward to working collectively as a team on the House delegation's behalf.
And Madam Chair, if I may quickly, I was remiss in not sharing that we do have the vice chair of the Senate delegation here, Senator Susan Lee. So my apologies to you, Senator Lee, and I apologize for interrupting.
No worries at all. Yeah, so just a bit of housekeeping before we get started this evening. For folks who are signed up to testify tonight, hopefully you're watching the live stream. We will keep you in the waiting room until it is just before the panel that you're going to be testifying on, at which point we'll admit you to the Zoom room. We're going to be starting tonight with elected officials who have 5 minutes each, followed by multiple panels of organizational representatives who have 3 minutes each, and finally individuals who will have 2 minutes each. I will note that if you have signed up with an organization and there is more than one of you testifying tonight on behalf of the organization, we do ask that anyone beyond the first person testifying just use the 2 minutes. If there are any technical problems for any of our attendees, we do have 2 staff on tonight's call who can assist, our delegation administrator, Olivia Rose, as well as Matt Harrington, who's my chief of staff, and they are available to help with any tech support issues in the chat. Otherwise, we just ask folks to please stay muted unless you're speaking. And when folks are being admitted into the Zoom room from the live stream, please make sure you close that live stream out so that we're not getting that audio feedback. For members of the delegation, if you have questions of any of the witnesses tonight, please use the raise hand function. We will be taking questions after each panel of witnesses. And if you'd like to follow along, the link of the list of everyone who has signed up for tonight and the order we're going in has been shared with the members of the delegation. So I think with that, we are ready to get started with our first panel. These are our elected officials. We will be starting with County Executive Mark Elrich, followed by County Council President Gabe Albernaz, followed by Mayor Judd Ashman from the city of Gaithersburg, and last but not least, Mayor Bridget Donald Newton from the city of Rockville. County Executive, you can begin.
Okay. Hi, everybody. And, thanks for giving us some time this evening. I want to welcome the new House delegation leadership team, and congratulations on ascending in the leadership here, and thank Senator Kramer and his team for being on, and Mark for your work. You all were, a really great team for us last year. You got a lot done in Annapolis. you've always had our backs before the pandemic, throughout it, and now as we've come out of that chapter in our history. And there's going to be a lot new in Annapolis. I want to congratulate Eric on the announcement of where he's going to end up. But there's a lot new coming in January. I know that Aaron and Joel, you're in for your first session, so that should be, nice opening adventure for you. Looking back on last year, you all shepherded through an unprecedented $447 million of new capital investments that will be made within the county borders, outside of the funds for transportation projects appropriated through the Transportation Trust Funds. And this included the first tranche of money for the public school construction projects funded through the Built to Learn program, which is very exciting. And also there's special thanks on this one because we're now getting a higher percentage of our projects covered with this money, which means the money actually goes further. And so, much further would have gone if it had just been the dollars without the higher share coming from the state. And the funds you directed from the state fund are going to support another 116 million in transit-related projects, 10 million for parks, tens of millions for parks, and millions for Montgomery College, and nearly 30 million for other community investments. And I'm excited that, Montgomery County has announced Montgomery College is opening an East County campus. And that work is now beginning. So we're very excited about that. So it was a banner year for the state, and it was a really banner year for Montgomery County as well. And we thank you for delivering. It meant a lot. So in terms of the business at hand, you've got a copy of our county's 2023 session priorities on your computers. This is a consensus document, meaning it reflects priority of both branches of government. And I'd like to begin with the Invest in Montgomery priority before I turn this over to Council President Albornoz. As you know, our county, and it's a big county, it's the biggest in the state, is fortunate to have the wherewithal, which includes the resources and a shared commitment to the public good that's allowed us the opportunity to invest heavily in our county. That said, while we may have a shared commitment, we'll never have the level of resources necessary to be the sole supporter, for example, of funding a public transportation system or a high quality pre-K through 16's public school system, as well as the facilities needed to put these students into the classrooms. So we need the state as a partner in investment. That's what last year was a lot of what happened last year was about being that partner. And if we're going to maintain our ability to compete regionally, nationally, and globally, and help deliver for the rest of the state, we need, this level of continued investment. I'm really excited about the announcement we made this week about the Health Institute coming to the North Bethesda, White Flint area. This is significant, and the addition of the system to this project makes it even more significant. Their president, said this will make Montgomery County the Silicon Valley of health, and that's what we want to be. And it gives us a signature opportunity to move forward. When I sat with the university in a private meeting, they were talking to us about private companies already approaching them about wanting to move next to where they're going to be in White Flint, North Bethesda. So this is big. We're going to see private activity in the life sciences area. We're also going to see it in artificial intelligence. And this is the kind of project that's really going to pay off. I think, the county's putting, about $40 million into this for the first few years, but this university is going to be asking the state to put in money sooner than later, probably, for a building or the presence in a building in the WMATA property. WMATA wants the Institute to be their anchor for that project. And their project is they're bringing in a master developer to develop that station along the life science lines. So there's a lot of things that are beginning to happen here. We can easily see ourselves in a situation where we build the same amount of square footage that Amazon envisioned building over 10 years. I have little doubt that we won't be able to do 10 million, 11 million square feet at a minimum over that period of time. That's going to mean we're going to need transit investments. If you all remember what the governor proposed for Amazon, 3 major transportation projects to make sure the transportation didn't get in the way of the development. And we're going to be working really hard with the new governor to make that point that this is all well and good, and the future potential has been laid out pretty clearly, but we're going to need some additional investments in order to achieve that potential. But this is good for Montgomery County, and it's going to redound in improving our reputation and getting people to take us seriously as an economic development area in this region. And that's important for us to do. And I'm very excited about where this is going to take us. I also want to note that, we've got other priority projects in here. The state's got a surplus again this year, which is great. I know that our jurisdiction, along with others, are dealing with, really high inflation rates and the effect on construction, and nowhere is that more painful. Well, there are two places where it's really painful. Affordable housing is one place, or housing in general, but the other really painful place is school construction. So any thoughts on how we can help address the shortfalls we're going to be seeing in school construction? We don't want to have to build less because things cost more, and our kids deserve better, and we need to figure out how we're going to cross some of this. So those are, probably like the big asks that we're looking at in terms of what we do in this budget. We've got our new list of transportation projects highlighted. We are in a situation now we can begin going to the state for funding for some of these transportation projects. So we're not looking for this to be entirely done by the state. We can go to the federal government as well now. But these are very, very high priorities for Montgomery County. I don't know if any of you remember a Post article from 5 years ago where they said that transportation was the biggest impediment in the region. And then they specified bus transportation in terms of an impediment to economic development. And we've got an opportunity to move this forward. And we've got a project that justifies it. And with your assistance, you're going to see Montgomery County take off. You're all going to be proud of it. You're all going to share in it. And we'll be sending more money to the state to help you accomplish all the other goals you have in the state of Maryland. So I look forward to working with you. I've appreciated, our opportunities to get together over the past few years, and I'll be coming back down to Annapolis again this year. So I'll stop there, turn it over to Gabe, and again, say thank you very much, everything you've done and everything I'm sure you'll do coming forward.
Well, thank you, Mark, and hello, good people. It's great to be with all of you this evening. I'll try to stick to my 5 minutes, but I want to begin by welcoming the incoming leadership. Congratulations to Chair Blakovich-Carr and Vice Chair Shetty. I've had the opportunity to work with both of you and every member of this delegation in some form or fashion, and I want to thank Delegate Corman for his outstanding leadership. And I also want to thank Senator Kramer for his continued leadership on the Senate and everybody who was voted into leadership this year. And also very much welcome the incoming members of the delegation who won their elections. We are so excited to be working with all of you. And just on a personal level, speaking on behalf of all of my colleagues, the open lines of communication and the problem solving that we have been able to undertake these last 4 years, and we know we'll undertake these next 4, is truly extraordinary. And we've been through some tough times together. We will probably be through more tough times together, but with new leadership in Annapolis in the governorship's office, I think there are some really big things that all of us can expect. And I think there's an opportunity for us to take some big swings this year and over the next 4. So I'm going to pick up where Mark left off and just quickly touch base on the blueprint for Maryland's future. We know the Accountability Implementation Board has laid out its initial plan, and we appreciate how transparent all of the board's work and deliberations have been. The early care and education workforce piece is going to be particularly challenging given the labor shortages and compensation issues that we currently have. And we ask that you further enhance the funding that was allocated last session to help stabilize the industry and allow this critical piece of blueprint to move forward. On the elections front, we are fortunate to have had the court allow early canvassing of ballots in this past general election. And we really want to thank your leadership, particularly that of Senator Kagan, in working to help codify. And we know that without the risk of a veto, we believe we will be able to codify, allowing our Board of Elections make their counts of mail-in ballots, which clearly is the preference of voters moving forward. As you know, the county has put in place a plan to achieve very aggressive climate change goals. The state acted last year on a major piece of environmental legislation too, and we'd like to collaborate with the state and other partners across the state to develop and test innovative solutions, which we hope will come in the form of legislation, regulations, and conversations, of which many will start in Annapolis. And as the chair of the county's Health and Human Services Committee, the issue with nursing home inspections or lack thereof is personally very important to me, and I know many of you. As you may know, the county had a small staff that has conducted inspections over nursing homes located in the county on behalf of the state. And several years ago, we lost the state funding for those positions, and we're told even if the costs were underwritten, the authority would not be reinstated. We do want to thank Delegate Resnick and others for taking up this cause. However, in the meantime, the low level of state inspections remains a very serious issue in Montgomery County and in the rest of the state. And we ask you to continue to keep this issue front and center so that it can be addressed by the new administration. We have many talented and credentialed newcomers to the county who cannot obtain licenses in Maryland. Behavioral health specialists, daycare providers, and so many other professions where the labor needs are great. Many thanks to Delegate Kelly for getting legislation passed that created the commission to study the healthcare workforce crisis in Maryland. We are following this closely and look forward to seeing the first report, which is due at the end of the year. Next, Vision Zero goals can only be met, we believe, with an even more aggressive initiatives to reduce the opportunities for serious and fatal crashes to occur on our roadways. So we are urging you to seriously consider allowing the county to place more speed cameras on highways with higher maximum speed limits and possibly allowing a system of increasing fines for repeat offenders. And also, please consider passing statewide legislation to close the loophole in NOAA's law that allows those with PBJs to avoid being required to participate in Maryland's Ignition Interlock System program. Last couple things I'll just note are we obviously have a very new council about to assume office with 6 remarkable women who will be joining my 5 colleagues and I who are returning. And we look forward to getting together socially, but also professionally to help tackle some really complex issues. And I want to acknowledge that today the council passed a zone text amendment to better define public spaces and where you can have a concealed carry permit. Obviously, with what has transpired with the Supreme Court last summer and then the governor's unilateral decision on policy without any sort of interaction with local jurisdictions, we fell into this gray area and wanted to get in front of it. And so we have worked with the delegation before, and specifically Delegate Lopez and Senator Lee on the ghost gun legislation, and we think that follows a similar track to help address the needs of our residents. And we know you're hearing from the same residents. We are very concerned about the rise in gun violence. There have been more than 928 firearms confiscated by our police department this year alone, and there's been a 200% increase in ghost guns. So this is a very serious issue, and we want to work with you on addressing it. So thank you all very much for allowing me to testify this evening. I got a 12-year-old with RSV, so I got to get home. But thank you all very much, and I look forward to following up with everyone. Take care, everybody.
Thank you very much. We will move on to Mayor Ashman to be followed by Mayor Newton.
Good evening, everyone, and a hearty welcome to all the incoming members and returning members of the delegation. We're really excited about our MoCo team, and it's lovely to see all of you. Special shout out to Chair Julie Polakovich-Carr from our District 17, and to all the leadership. For the record, Judd Ashman, Mayor of Gaithersburg, and I can't say enough about how much we appreciate the support we get from members of this delegation. As always, we look forward to working with everyone during the session and beyond. The city has 3 legislative priorities this year, for which we respectfully request your support. First, we're seeking, in collaboration with MML, revisions to the Maryland Police Accountability Act, which would allow municipalities like the city of Gaithersburg the option to implement our own Police Accountability Board and Administrative Charging Committee, meeting the statutory requirements of a county-created board and committee. We recommend this change because, one, there's no current requirement for municipal representation on these county-created entities. So specific review of municipal trends, practices, and recommendations really should be made and considered by municipal officials. Two, keeping the boards and committee local means a heightened familiarity with that police department's regulations and policies. And three, there's a backlog of disciplinary cases in Montgomery County. So requiring Gaithersburg Police Department cases to be processed through a county board and committee is likely to lead to substantial delays in disciplinary actions. Our next priority is MARC. We understand the city and the region benefits greatly from enhanced MARC service. And for that reason, we would like to support any legislation that prioritizes investments in MARC. It's our hope that the state will prioritize recommendations that address sporadic service along the Mark Brunswick line and the failure to provide connectivity to VRE, Amtrak, and other regional rail networks. Third, the city would like to alter certain public notice requirements. As you know, for certain actions, the city is currently required to publish a legal notice in a newspaper of general circulation. For us, that newspaper is the Washington Post, and this requirement is quite costly. And I'd argue the efficacy of reaching the public through legal notices in the Post is questionable at best. We believe posting in more modern and go-to sources for news, including social media, will meet the intent of the law. And so we're currently working with stakeholders to take a closer look at this to determine the best path forward. On the transportation front, we continue to advocate for the reinstatement of the remaining phases of the MD 117 Clopper Road project. As mentioned at the last MDOT CTP tour, there's still no funding for this critical project, which has been on hold since the FY 2010-2015 CTP. It is important that this long-delayed project be renewed to address growing safety and congestion issues experienced now and expected to grow in upcoming years. Just last night, we had a collision with some pretty bad damage at Clopper Road and Watkins Mill. And today, as if to underscore this very testimony, a sinkhole opened up on this very road. So we have real issues with MD 117 and we need your help. Finally, while it goes without saying, we remain supportive of legislation that provides much needed support for the city and state's business community, at-risk residents, and others who've been most acutely impacted by COVID-19. We respectfully ask that you continue to consider bills that could potentially benefit those in our community most in need of their support. We are extremely grateful to have received capital funding for improvements at the city's Bloom Park, improvements that include a new boardwalk and educational signage to be included within a more comprehensive trail improvement program. We will continue to discuss potential capital initiatives for this upcoming session with our D17 and D39 delegations. So on behalf of the city, just want to express our pride in the work of this delegation. You guys are doing a great job, and I want to thank all of you for what you do on behalf of Gaithersburg, Montgomery County, and our state as a whole. So thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mayor Newton.
Can I ask a quick question of Judd Ashman?
Actually, Senator King, we'll take questions at the end of the panel, if that's okay.
Well, that's okay if they stay. If they don't, we can't ask them questions.
I'm going to stay for questions. So thank you.
All right.
Good evening. I'm Bridget Donald Newton, Mayor of the City of Rockville, and on behalf of the Mayor and Council, I apologize for my cold, but I want to give a strong congratulations to Rockville Delegate Julie Polakovich-Carr on her election as Chair of the House Delegation, and a welcome and congratulations to the rest of the General Assembly. I think Mayor Ashman said it. We are very, very pleased with our General Assembly. You all work very hard, and we are honored to be in your area. We'd like to ask for your support for Rockville's 2023 state legislative priorities and look forward to partnering with you on the following. Supporting educational needs across the spectrum, prioritizing engagement in all aspects of educational policy from birth through community college to include childcare. In order to secure additional state funding for capital and operating needs, we will have to work together. As county schools emerge from the pandemic, challenges are still persisting, including learning loss from virtual education, staffing shortages, student mental health concerns, supply chain issues, and increased construction costs. We need the state financial support, which would be essential in addressing these issues and fostering the healthy development of our children. We will work with you to advocate and support a Vision Zero legislation with MDOT and Maryland policymakers to promote safety and engineering improvements along state roadways for people driving, rolling, walking, biking, and using transit. The city of Rockville has recently had several critical pedestrian crashes. Some have resulted in the loss of life on 355 just the other day. Advocate, I'm so sorry, I lost my place. Advocate for an amendment to Maryland's P3 legislation that would require a comprehensive financial analysis be done before any large-scale infrastructure projects are approved. Support legislation that addresses excessive noise caused by illegally modified exhaust systems. Support increased funding for senior transportation services, recreation and wellness programming, senior programming in Rockville, aging in place, and villages, which Rockville is doing a wonderful job starting the villages program. Increase awareness of all senior programming. Support enabling legislation that would authorize jurisdictions to post electronic legal notices. As Mayor Ashman said, Rockville and other municipalities are forced to pay costly print notices to the Washington Post. With the election of Governor-elect Moore and Lieutenant Governor Miller, as well as Comptroller-elect Lehrman, Rockville asks that the 495-270 P3 be put on hold so that a more environmental, equitable, and financially feasible solution could be explored. We agree that there is congestion in the northern section of 270. However, this P3 will not solve that problem and will most disadvantage those that can afford at least. We need transit options, not more pavement. Rockville requests your support for a legislative bond initiative in the amount of $500,000 for the design and construction of gender-neutral restrooms at the Twin Brook Community Recreation Center. This project is aligned with our priority to provide a welcoming and socially equitable community for all. The Twin Brook Community Center provides programming that serves a diverse community, including students that attend Twin Brook Elementary, a Title I school, currently with 65% farms. Please endorse Mayor Ashman's point about the Rockville priority enabling legislation that would revise state law relating to police accountability boards and administrative charging committees. Finally, we look forward to partnering with you in the upcoming session to advance Rockville and Maryland's 2023 state legislative priorities. Thank you all.
Thanks for being with us in spite of feeling unwell. And thank you, all four of you, for your service. We do have a couple questions. We'll start with Senator King and then Senator Lee.
Yeah, I just have a comment to Mayor Ashman. I had an occasion to sit at dinner with a MARC representative just last month. And interestingly enough, they already have the idea of expanding. So we've talked about, we don't have a date yet, but we're going to put together a date with you all to try and work out expansion. So it's good all the way around.
Great.
Excellent news. Thank you.
Senator Lee.
Can you hear me? Okay, the mic's working finally. Yeah, this is for our county executive, Mark Elridge. First of all, is he still on?
Yeah.
Oh, there you are, Mark. Sorry. Okay. First of all, I'd like to commend you for wonderful founding and doing the MOU with our higher ed institutions in order to make Montgomery County the epicenter of bioscience and medical innovations. That was a wonderful, wonderful ceremony, and it sounds so encouraging. And I think we made history. But I wanted to ask you, with this move forward in bioscience for our county, do you envision also partnerships with perhaps our federal partners like FDA in terms of the reason I say that is because, you know, when you do clinical trials and you also get FDA approval, it involves a very complicated process. So, and those innovators are trying to take their research to product often need a little bit of assistance, and it would be great to have that one-stop shop in this Science Institute or whatever we call it. And since we're kind of like, we have all these federal regulatory agencies around here, but we also got the higher eds and we got the scientists here. So do you envision that with perhaps FDA? So I've been getting questions about that.
Yeah,
and thank you again for this victory.
Look, I think that's a real possibility. You know, engaged themselves in this project. I didn't know if they were going to get involved, if this was going to focus primarily on the AI and research side. But the University of Maryland saw an opportunity to really advance healthcare, and you know, they're very interested in trials and things that can help people, you know, decide whether things work or don't. So I anticipate they will play a role with the FDA. A very strong role with the FDA. I also believe you're going to see more participation out of NIH. When I met with NIH and started talking with them about this, their interest was being able to provide opportunities to hold on some of the graduate talent that they produce in NIH that leaves the area. And they see this as important to being able to hold on to that. And so I think, you know, from what I gather from my talks with the industry people, the more we produce in talent, the more we bring here and hold, and the greater we're going to get federal participation, because it's a lot of their people who will be taking advantage of the programs and the things we're doing here. So I think I think this thing has gotten bigger. I'll be honest, it got bigger than what I thought it was going to be when UMS decided they wanted to make this a major focus. So I think these other things come into play now.
Yeah, County Executive, I think that also, if we get our federal partners involved, I would think that would encourage greater investment. And I think that's something that you're trying to also create too. So
we're using this as a tool in the search for ARPA-H. Because, you know, ARPA-H, if the Senate doesn't preclude it from being in the vicinity of NIH, which we think will prevail on, then this becomes a huge selling point to ARPA-H, because the mass data computing, Maryland told us the only other place that is doing even what they envision, starting down the path of what they envision, is out in California. And having this right next to NIH and FDA and all these other facilities is a big deal. And I think that if we're free to compete for NIH, for ARPA-H, I think this is going to give us a boost.
Well, yeah, thank you for your leadership and vision. We're so appreciative. Anything that we can do in the state to help move this along, please don't hesitate to call on us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from members of the delegation before we move to our next panel? Seeing none, I'll turn this back over to Senator Kramer to call up the next set of witnesses.
Thank you for that. And I just want to say thanks to our local elected officials who spoke this evening. We very much appreciate all that you do in local government and how important the work you do is, the role you play, and we are very dependent on your input to fully understand what it is that the residents at the local level are seeking, and you all provide an invaluable service to our residents, and thank you very much for your service. I will apologize in advance for any harm I do to names as I call up the next panel, but it will be comprised of Ann Kademian, Kevin Beverly, Upneat Atwal, Michael Brintnall, Faith Agehu, and Joshua Hayes. You all will have 3 minutes, and we ask that you please pay close attention to the time clock, and we'll begin with Ann.
So good evening, everyone. I'm Ann Kademian, and I'm starting my third year as Executive Director of the Universities at Shady Grove. As you heard, I'm joined tonight by Kevin Beverly, Chair of our USG Board of Advisors, and Upneet Atwal, one of our Strategic Projects Coordinator and a graduate of the R.H. Smith School of Business right here at USG. Congratulations to all of you on your successful campaigns last week, and thank you all for your tremendous support for USG over the past 20 plus years. I am so grateful that we have such an engaged delegation when it comes to supporting USG's mission to serve what I call the future student, the non-traditional student who represents almost 3/4 of all students in higher education in this country. They come from diverse backgrounds. They are often first in their families to go to college. They work while they're going to school. They have families or children to take care of. We must meet the needs of these students if we as a country intend to remain viable and successful. For decades, higher ed's main recipe for success has been built around serving college students who come to campus for 4 years, live in a dorm, and seek to earn their degrees in a resident campus environment. But the students of the future need higher education that truly meets them where they are in life. Educational opportunities that are centered more on the career-ready skills that they will need for the workforce following graduation. And short-term workforce knowledge won't be enough. The reality is that there are evolving circumstances like COVID that will require them to be lifelong learners long after their first years of higher education. We need bold innovation to deliver greater access and affordability, to deliver on the promise of meaningful employment and sustainable wage careers, and we need to do it at scale. That's exactly why USG was founded as a 21st century higher education solution that supports the unique needs and expectations of both non-traditional students and the local workforce. By working with our 9 university partners, with MCPS, with Montgomery College, with other area community colleges, we can become a nimble and dynamic hub for innovation, innovative education that meets students where they are and can help to propel and transform our local economy. The ROI for investing in Shady Grove students will be enormous. I ask that in FY24, you support USG's strategic vision with a second installment of $5 million in one-time funds that build on the investment you started in FY23 so that we can ensure the initiatives put in place this year will come to fruition. And in FY25, we plan to demonstrate the impact of this investment and to request the $5 million to be built into the base budget for USG moving forward. I ask that you go to bat for USG as a vital connection between the Montgomery County educational system and the current and future workforce needs of our region. USG will be a key player in the new exciting research institute in North Bethesda. Congratulations to County Executive Elrich for this exciting initiative and vision. We will be providing students enrolled in programs at USG with internship and research opportunities. And we are in regular discussions with leadership in the USM to establish USG as an innovation hub for transformative higher education. And we look forward to working with you to bring this vision forward. It is imperative that we as a county be a champion for educational change and lead in delivering on the equity promise for all students. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you, Anne. Very much appreciate the incredible work that USG does and what a stellar resource it is for the residents of Montgomery County. And we always look forward to working with and partnering with USG. So thank you for that. Kevin Beverly, you are up, sir.
Good evening, everyone. Again, it's Kevin Beverly. I'm former CEO of Social and Scientific Systems, a bioscience research company in Silver Spring. But right now, I'm currently, as Ann said, the chair of the board of advisors for USG. I also serve as a board chair for an organization called College Tracks, which is a college access and success organization within the county. I serve there as well. Lastly, but not least, I serve as the chair of the board of the Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation. And as a member of that board, I see squarely where the issue and this nexus of education and economic development need to be. It's my core belief that these two things are intrinsically intertwined. There's an economic imperative that we need to pay attention to because of what USG and our economy and the students that are in that economy, and we want to be in that economy, mean. The two cannot be truly transformative or impactful without deep alignment and partnership to address the equity challenges that exist in our county today. So with that in mind, I want to first thank the delegation for all the support of USG over the past 20 years. I've been on this board half of that time. And so I've witnessed its growth. I've witnessed the delegation's intentions to allow us to build that $175 million biomedical science engineering facility. It's an awesome facility. If you haven't gotten down to see it, you should. And I do appreciate your continued support going forward. I hope, thank you for the $5 million one time that you gave us the last time. I'm hoping that it's not one time. I'm hoping that you'll see the value in what our strategic vision brings to the county and the opportunity for us to actually move this forward. But in short, USG is, as Ann described, it's affordable, it's accessible, it's nimble, but we need to be scalable. The key to making it scalable is deeper and more robust alignment between our educational institutions, which I think if you were there on last Friday, you witnessed several of those institutions coming together to help County Executive Eldridge realize his dream and objective there. We also have within us this group of businesses that need to pay attention differently as well, which is where I hope that my experience in that sector comes in as we try to bring them closer in this beautiful, diverse county that we have. The other points that I'd like to make around our vision is that its foundation is this transformative alignment. And to ensure this, we really do need our legislature to sort of recognize the value that USG has in this county and how it's necessary to sustain us going forward. And we're no longer this startup, this untested organization. We've got true demonstration of what it takes to bring that next generation of workforce into being for Montgomery County. It's like I said last year before you, says, while USG has proven to be successful, but it's punching under its weight. And the only way we're going to get the punch at our weight is with funding. So what I'd like to ask in this coming legislative year, that you do continue your investment in the USG to help us meet the needs of the workforce and contribute directly to economic development. And in addition, we'll be asking for your support as a place of innovation within the USM system to incubate transformative educational and workforce initiatives that scale to USM and to the state. And with that, I'll thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Kevin. We appreciate your advocacy and hard work. Up next is Upneat.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Upneat Atwell, and I'm here to provide testimony on behalf of the universities at Shady Grove and share a bit about my personal journey at USG. I'm currently a strategic projects coordinator at USG, focusing on academic planning and pathway planning and helping bridge public policy, urban planning, and higher education together here in Montgomery County. My journey began at Montgomery County Public Schools, where I attended Washington Grove Elementary, Forest Oak Middle, Gaysburg High School, and my last year of high school at Wooten High School. Right before I graduated, I was introduced to Montgomery College and the opportunities that exist there. At the time, I did not know what I wanted to do professionally, but I did know that business seemed interesting. At MC, I attended classes at Rockville and the Germantown campuses, completing my AA in business. I knew I wanted to continue my education, but I was not sure which schools to apply for or what I wanted to accomplish with an undergraduate degree. That is when I was introduced to USG and the programs that were offered at the campus. I had actually known about USG's campus, but I had no clue what it actually was, which is a university campus. I met with the recruitment center, attended an open house event, and then met with the program director of the R.H. Smith School of Business at USG. And I was impressed by the personal contacts and connections I was able to make in such a short period of time. I went ahead and applied to the Smith School at USG, which was actually the only school I applied for when I was leaving Montgomery College. So I really was risking it all. A few months later, I heard back that I was accepted at the Smith School, and fast forward 2 years, I had earned my BS in business and entrepreneurship. While at USG, I served as a student ambassador as well as a student council member, among other leadership activities. And all of these accomplishments were not things I had ever thought about doing until I was at USG, and the community there pushed me to achieve these things. During my time at USG, I realized that I wanted to focus my work on serving the community. And this idea had come to me from a variety of personal experiences, work experiences, and academic experiences. I looked into jobs and graduate programs that would allow me to mesh my business education with community service and implementation. I came across the field of urban planning, which I knew nothing about at the time, and became passionate about the industry. I applied for and was accepted to the Urban and Regional Planning Master's Program at Georgetown, and also began a graduate student internship at Montgomery Planning at the same time. As I continued my studies and working at Montgomery Planning, I remained active and engaged with USG, serving on different committees and work groups to help guide the future of the campus. This included serving as an alumni representative on the 2019 JCR report and the Pathways to Workforce work group for USG 2.0, among other leadership activities. After a year at Montgomery Planning, I left to serve as a graduate fellow at the Montgomery County Council, and not too long after, I became a senior legislative aide at the Montgomery County Council, where I was there for 2 years. During this time, I was really able to impact various communities of Montgomery County through planning and policy, while continuously advocating for improved education and engagement of our county's youth. Earlier this year, I was presented with an opportunity to mesh all of this together and join the Office of the Executive Director at USG to help strengthen and create pathways for our county's youth from MCPS to Montgomery College to USG to a job and a career. I can assure you I did not need any convincing to take that step in my career. Now my journey has come full circle, but it was all due to the pathways and transfer opportunities that were available to me from high school to Montgomery College and then to the University of Maryland Smith School of Business at USG. Many, if not most, of my friends and colleagues that have actually obtained an undergraduate degree have also followed this pathway. I share this story because it is not, my story and journey are not unique. This is because many of the students at USG have personal stories that are very telling of the hurdles and obstacles that need to be overcome to move forward, and USG provides an opportunity for hundreds and thousands of students to do so. I know a lot of former students who would not have achieved their academic or professional goals if it were not for the USG campus and the support and community that are provided there, along with the opportunities to gain meaningful employment thereafter. Their stories should also be shared and heard so that the leaders of Montgomery County and the state of Maryland can truly understand how precious and important USG is, especially to our Black, Brown, and immigrant communities, among other populations. Your support of USG is pivotal to its success, but most importantly, to that of thousands of students who are achieving their career goals, just like me. Thank you for your time.
Neat. Thank you for sharing that inspirational story with us. And that's one of the reasons we take such great pride in the good work that USG does. So thank you for sharing that with us. And next up, Michael Brentnall.
Thank you, Senator Kramer. I'm Dr. Michael Brentnall. I serve as the chair of the Montgomery College Board of Trustees, and I want to thank you all for the opportunity to speak and congratulate all of you and the delegation. And especially thank you for your ongoing support of Montgomery College. Because of your support, the Catherine and Isaiah Leggett Math and Science Building is now well on its way to completion, bringing much needed modern classrooms and labs to MC's first campus. And we look forward to seeing you all at a ribbon cutting ceremony in January of 2024. Next on for us, the college campuses need modern libraries. And we're going to ask your support for library projects on the Tacoma Park Silver Spring campus and for the Rockville campus. For our Germantown campus, we plan to include a modern library and a new student services center. So we will ask to support to fund this project for a center that gives students access to services they need in one place. Registration, financial aid, counseling, and all, as well as a place for study. Centralized student service operations aligned with the library, we know, is improves student success. As you also know, we have signed a lease, and the college will open the East County Educational Center in the fall of 2023. And thank you so much for your support for this initiative. Once opened, we'll then begin planning a full-service campus for the East County. A fourth campus will open more doors for more Montgomery County residents and advance our mission really fully to support, to help the county thrive across the full range of the county's geography. While having high quality facilities is critical, students also need improved access to opportunities for post-secondary education. Without access to degree opportunities, jobs go vacant for lack of talent. Too few residents are able to get a timely and affordable degree that can lead to families sustaining wages. So we ask you to continue your efforts to keep tuition affordable. If students are turned away from post-secondary education because of costs, the economy suffers. Cybersecurity jobs go unfilled. Healthcare employers desperately need nurses, radiological technicians, phlebotomists. MCPS needs more teachers to meet the blueprint for Maryland. So please continue your efforts to improve access, and also continue efforts to improve access for baccalaureate degrees for community college students. Getting more students through a bachelor's in teaching and nursing and technology and all the range of fields you've been hearing us all talk about will make a difference for students and close workforce shortages. With your visionary leadership, we can break down the silos, advance opportunities, meet workforce demands, and fuel the economy with homegrown talent. So please help us give community college students equitable access to high quality and affordable post-secondary education that they need and that they deserve, to secure economic opportunity for them and to advance the community as well. Thank you all so much for your support for Montgomery College, your college, and thank you for the time to speak to you today. And I should add, I bring greetings as well from our fabulous new president, Dr. Jermaine Williams. Thank you.
Michael, thank you, sir. I know I speak for the entire delegation when I say that Montgomery College is truly one of the crown jewels of this county, and a big part of the heartbeat of what makes Montgomery County an incredible place to live and to raise a family. And so thank you for the good work the college is doing, very much so.
Thank you.
With that, we have Faith, you're up.
Good evening, members of the Montgomery delegation. It is truly an honor to speak to you tonight. My name is Faith Ihegihu. I'm a nursing student at the Montgomery College's Tacoma Park and Silver Spring campus. I want to be a nurse because I have had family members who suffered greatly due to limited access to quality healthcare. I would like to be a part of the solution to this problem. I plan to be a pediatric oncology nurse. This is a difficult job, but I'm passionate about giving children their best chance at a healthy future in Montgomery County. On behalf of all of Montgomery College students, thank you all for your support of our college. I ask for your continued support to help keep tuition affordable so students can access the education they need to succeed. Many students, even though working while attending classes, struggle to pay their bills. Some have also had parents, children, and siblings that they're also sponsoring and working with while trying to get an outstanding education at Montgomery College. With affordable tuition, we know we can get the higher education we need to get good paying jobs and gain a better life for our families. Thank you also for supporting high quality facilities that help us succeed. Students at my campus are very excited about the Leggett Math and Science building. Please continue to support the library renovations at the TPSS and Rockville campuses, as well as the Student Service Center at the Germantown campus, which will house a modern library for students. We need libraries with study spaces, technology, and access to textbooks, especially for those who cannot afford these. Thank you for your continued support of Montgomery College. This college has given me a future full of possibility and service to others. With affordable tuition and quality facilities, the opportunities for a bright future become a reality for students like me. Thank you.
Thank you, Faith. We very much appreciate your taking the time this evening to come speak to us and share a little bit about your story, and wish you the very best going forward. Joshua, you're up, sir.
Can you hear me okay?
Thank you. Yes.
Okay, good evening, members of the Montgomery County delegation. Thank you for the honor to speak with you. My name is Joshua Hayes, and I serve as a student senator at Montgomery College Germantown campus. And I'm studying cloud computing, networking technology, and plan to transfer to earn a bachelor's degree in computer science. Let me be direct. I'm here tonight to thank you for helping to save my life. Because of your ongoing support to MC, you have helped me to pull myself up from homelessness. During those dark days, I spent, my days reading in the Rockville Library, into the Montgomery Crisis Center actually showed me the way to the actual workforce Montgomery, which also is where I actually found out about MC. Thanks to this delegation, I rose from homelessness to a college student, to a student senator, and now an advocate for my fellow students. In accordance with that actual role, I ask that you please continue to keep MC's tuition affordable so that anyone in Montgomery County may obtain a college education who would like to have one. Thank you also for the outstanding learning facilities. Tacoma Park and Silver Springs students are excited about the Leggett building that's opening soon. Please continue to provide facilities that students need, specifically renovations for libraries at the Tacoma Park, Silver Springs, and Rockville campuses. All students need a modern library to study between classes and work, as well as access to textbooks, computers, and quiet spaces. And lastly, I am proud to ask you to support your support for the Germantown Student Center, which will house a modern library on the Germantown campus and provide services like financial aid, counselors, and services that are necessary, obviously, to be a successful student. I'm honored to advocate for future MC students so they can actually have these student services at in the library at their fingertips. Thank you all for what all you do for Montgomery County residents. And thank you for supporting MC. You guys are changing lives. You changed my life. So thank you all.
Joshua, thank you, sir, for sharing that inspirational story with us. That really, I think, lets us know it resonates how important the college is to our community. So thank you for taking the time to share that story with us. I see we have a couple of questions, and I believe Delegate Foley, you, ma'am, had your hand up first, so please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is a fairly simple, straightforward one. First of all, thank you to the leaders and the students in these institutions who are doing a great job of running the institutions, and the students who are so inspirational in what they're doing with the education they're getting here in Montgomery County. My question is a simple one for, I guess, Miss Kadi, I can't pronounce your last name, Ian, but I would, you can correct me on that. But my question is, since USG is kind of a very unusual and innovative higher education institution, I wanted to get some idea of what the enrollment or the use was there. How many students, partake in the programs there, if you could give me an idea.
Sure. We have about 3,500 students right now, and about a little over 2,000 of those students are undergraduate students who are completing their 3rd and 4th years of a baccalaureate degree at Shady Grove, and a little over 1,000 are graduate students. I believe that we have capacity to grow significantly, and that's in our plan and our vision. You heard Kevin Beverly reference a quote by Ike Leggett that we're punching below our weight class, because I think there's so much more we can do, and we plan to do that through some rigorous pathway effort and collaboration. So
okay, great, thank you. And for Montgomery College, what's the enrollment there?
There are different ways to look at the enrollment. We're serving over 40,000 students a year in various capacities, some credit, non-credit in the mix, and maybe 17,000, something like that, that are in full-time and strong part-time trajectories to a degree.
Thank you.
Senator Kagan, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. As Delegate Foley and as you, Mr. Chair, mentioned, the stories, the testimony from Upneat, from Faith, and from Josh are really compelling. So thank you for your leadership and for taking the time to join us. Dr. Kademian, I don't know whether you want to answer this question, or Kevin Beverly or someone else, but I wonder if you can tell us about the entrepreneurship lab, how it's going, how many students are involved, and is there any measurable outcome in terms of job creation, business and nonprofit creation or sustenance, and what the trajectory might be for the future?
Absolutely. So the lab is still relatively new, but it's open to any student who wants to participate in the programs across USG. So there are regular monthly programmings, anywhere from 30 to 40, 50 students going through it, taking advantage of those programs. The primary focus right now, though, is on our equity incubator. We served 6 teams in the equity incubator last spring. This fall, we're serving 30 teams. In the spring, we'll serve another 30, and with federal earmark funds that we hope will come through for us in fall of 23, we'll serve 100 teams in the equity incubator in the fall and another 100 in the spring. These, we are tracking the participants in this by equity incubator. It means that the participants are underserved members of the entrepreneurship ecosystem. So women or minoritized entrepreneurs who are looking for more access and support. And so we will be tracking rigorously the outcomes from that process, the companies or the organizations that develop in that process, and in possible investment opportunities and things as well. So we're still in the early phases of that, but you can count that we'll be measuring the impact of that going forward with all of our county partners who are supportive of that effort as well.
If I could just add to what Ann had said, I sit on the steering committee for that group, and I will tell you that the points that she made about these young people who are coming to this whole entrepreneurial thing without the benefit of having parents in their households, for the most part, who have any idea what that means. So they are definitely a different student, and a different approach to entrepreneurship has to be engaged in order to, one, help them recognize that they can do this, which you may not think is a big deal, but it is a big deal in populations like these because they don't believe, and you've got to get them to recognize their own talents. So it's very important to recognize what starting something like this for a group of students who don't know what it is very important.
Thank you, Mr. Beverly, and thank you for serving on that board as well as the USG Chancellor's Board of Advisors. Just clarifying, Dr. Kademian or Mr. Beverly, when you say teams, how many are on a team? Are we talking about 2? Is it more than that? Just how many students are involved in the entrepreneurship lab?
It can vary, and it's not all students. So students are eligible, but it's also residents from across the county as well. So it's very much a very open, inclusive opportunity for residents in the county as well as students. Teams can be 2, they can be 6. I've seen all of them. So it just depends on the proposal and the company and how they work together.
And last question, I assume that anyone watching this who is unfamiliar with it can easily find information on USG's website?
Yes, absolutely. And the equity incubator you can find on the website and apply for the next semester because the current one is in process right now.
Perfect. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Any other questions from the delegation colleagues? Going once, going twice. I don't see any. So, Madam Chair, back to you, and thank you to the panel.
Thank you.
Thank you. So our next panel is the last of the quasi-governmental entities, calling Michael Beach, Dr. Jeffrey Johnson, and Leah Goldfein. I believe Dr. Johnson is the only one who is currently in the Zoom room. So we'll go ahead and start with him. If the other witnesses do join the Zoom call, we will work them in later this evening. Dr. Johnson, go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening, and a special good evening to the Montgomery County delegation, and congratulations on your success in the recent elections. My name is Dr. Jeffrey Johnson, and I'm chair of the Montgomery County Community Action Board. I want to start by thanking the delegation for your support and leadership on so many issues impacting lower income county residents, including the board's strategic priorities: economic opportunity, increasing wages and training, affordable housing, responsive human services, increasing food security, and early childhood education. I also want to thank Delegate Pam Queen, who participated in our free advocacy training program for lower income county residents, the Community Advocacy Institute. Tonight, I want to focus on a few legislative priorities. First, we are requesting your support for a community action fund in the amount of $9,194,967 to enhance our federal community block grant program, mirroring matches of other progressive states, including Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Washington. State support would allow CAAs, many of which are the primary nonprofits in their region, to better serve the community, providing human services, food, transportation, housing, utility assistance, free tax help, Head Start, and services to seniors and the disabled. We also request help in maintaining $950,000 in state funding through the Department of Human Services, which supports the two-gen whole family approach in each of our agencies. The whole family approach is a best practice among human services through the services to meet the needs of everyone in the family through a quote-unquote no wrong door approach of integrated services. For decades, our TEST Community Action Center in Long Branch has been utilizing this approach with bilingual, highly trained staff about the range of public and private services, assuring that residents have access to these services. Funding CAA's efforts also supports alignment with the goals of the Maryland Two-Gen Family Economic Security Commission. Next, our board requests the delegation support to make the 2021 expansion of the Maryland Earned Income Tax permanent. These expansions raise the state match to 45% of the federal EITC, increase EITC for single adults, and for the first time, included taxpayers with individual tax identification numbers. In Montgomery County, these expansions double the impact as working families' income supplemental matches the state EITC. Our board thanks Delegate Carr for her leadership on expanding the state's child tax credit, which is refundable, available to ITIN filers, and complements the EITC. We support expanding the CTC to serve more families. As the governing body for Head Start, our board closely monitors the implementation of the blueprint for Maryland's future. We are concerned about current requirements for its mixed delivery pre-K program, which present challenges for private providers to meet credentialing requirements to maintain its workforce and to access funding. We ask you to explore changes to the law to address these concerns. Finally, I have some exciting news. The updated interactive Montgomery County Self-Sufficiency Standard will soon be available online, and the full Maryland report will be available in the coming months. The Self-Sufficiency Standard is a more accurate measure of the cost of living, reflecting local costs of basic necessities and specific family structures. Not surprisingly, the 2022 Self-Sufficiency Standard reflects significant increases in costs. For example, the Self-Sufficiency Standard for a household of one adult, one infant, and a preschooler is an astounding $127,589. We look forward to joining our Maryland colleagues to share this key tool to consider policies that reduce the gap by increasing access to childcare, housing, utilities, food, and through strengthening work supports like tax credits and living wages. Thank you for the opportunity to share the board's priorities.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Are there any questions for this panel? Not seeing any, and I'll just again double check Michael Beach or Leah Goldfine. I don't see them in the waiting room. Again, we'll go back to them if they show up later this evening. Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Before we move back to Chair Kramer, I will just put out a public service announcement courtesy of Senator Kagan. Just a reminder for our witnesses to, please explain what acronyms are and let us, so everyone is on the same page and knows what terms you're referring to. Thank you very much. Back at you, Chair Kramer.
Thank you for that. The following panel is comprised of Denise Gilmore, Martin Rosendale, Levante Chapman, Chris Gillis, Janisink Sartucci, and Jason Spiegel. Denise, you are up.
Good afternoon, or good evening, I guess, at this point. My name is Denise Gilmore, and I am a legislative director for AFSCME Council 3. We represent 30,000 workers across Maryland, including the state and public higher education employees in Montgomery County. Our members' top priorities this legislative session are going to be to work on fixing the staffing crisis that's in state government. The whole world is short-staffed, but certainly when our governments are short-staffed, it impacts everyone. We see this at the services that we can provide for juveniles at the Regional Institutes for Children and Adolescents and the Noise building in Rockville. We see it with driver's license examinations at the MVA. We see it at the Office of the Public Defender, where we're struggling to meet, our constitutional mandate to provide public defense right now. We are going to be pushing for more investments in our workforce and to improve working conditions. We're so excited to work with this delegation who truly, this is just a powerhouse of labor supporters. I hesitate to even shout one person out. So many folks have been really great. So we're appreciative of that. We're excited to work with the new administration. And then finally, to harness all this really exciting energy and labor right now with all of the new union organizing that's happening. We are also pursuing efforts to make it easier for public employees to organize into a union and to collectively bargain. We want to get more workers a seat at the table, but we also want to make sure that when they get to the table, they have a fair playing field with management. So we are so excited for this upcoming session. We're so appreciative of all the labor champions that are a part of the Maryland or the Montgomery County delegation. And thank you so much for your time this evening, Senator Kramer and the rest of the delegation.
Thank you for that, Denise. And on behalf of our delegation, our thanks and appreciation to all the incredible public employees out there keeping the trains running on schedule. And there's a lot of good work being done out there, and we appreciate it. Thank you. Martin, you're up, please. Do we have Martin Rosendale with us? Don't see Martin. All right. In that case, let's please move to Ms. Chapman.
Hello, senators and delegates. Thank you for the opportunity to represent the priorities of the nonprofit sector in this forum tonight. My name is Levante Chapman, and I'm the Executive Director of Nonprofit Montgomery. We support more than 200 nonprofit organizations with technical assistance, training and resources, and advocacy on issues of importance to the nonprofit sector. Our cross-sector initiative, Montgomery Moving Forward, addresses social and economic challenges through a collective impact process that leads to long-term solutions. I'm here today to ask your continued support for nonprofits. As you know, there are an estimated 6,100 nonprofits in Montgomery County, which employs 49,000 people with annual wages totaling almost $3 million. These organizations serve residents in every district, in every zip code in the county. As a general principle, we ask that you see us as your partners in working with the General Assembly and the new Moore administration to ensure that Montgomery County residents get the services they need and the resources they need to thrive. We're especially interested in the outcome of efforts to streamline and clarify the procurement process for nonprofits, so we no longer have to float state-funded projects while wondering when the check will arrive. And we're looking forward to working with you to leverage your new powers in deciding on budget matters. More specifically, we request your support on the following. Current prompt pay laws and regulations that set standards for review of invoices don't apply to the reimbursable grant agreements that most nonprofits hold with the state. There have been efforts to pass legislation to create parity, and last year a bill made it through the Senate. We ask that you take steps to ensure that nonprofits serving Maryland's businesses that contract with the state. As an interim measure, the Nimble Loan Fund can help nonprofits continue to do their work while waiting for state payments. Nonprofit Montgomery fully supports increasing the funding of the Nimble account to the full $1 million that was originally envisioned, allowing more Maryland nonprofits to take advantage of this interest-free micro bridge loan. Additionally, your support of early care and education over the last 2 years has been tremendous and critical for childcare providers, families, and the littlest learners. We look forward to your work, or we look forward to working with you to explore what universal access to childcare looks like and to make this dream a reality across Maryland. In the upcoming General Assembly session, we're eager for you to monitor the implementation of the early care legislation, particularly legislation relating to presumptive eligibility for parents and timely payments of childcare providers. We're also interested in what the implementation of the blueprint will mean for our youngest learners and ask your continued attention to ensuring childcare providers are involved in the rollout process. We remain steadfast in our commitment to working with you and our MSDE, that's the Maryland State Department of Education, partners in ensuring a more equitable, timely, and culturally appropriate early care and education system and creating a more resilient and representative childcare system in our state. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Levante. Very much appreciate all our nonprofits do for the county. Moving on now to Chris Gillis, please.
Thanks, Senator Kramer. Hi, delegates and senators. My name is Chris Gillis. I'm speaking on behalf of MHP, the largest nonprofit provider of affordable housing in the county. So not surprisingly, our top priority this year is affordable housing. I'm going to keep things really simple and just present you with one way that the delegation can tangibly help affordable housing in this upcoming session. So in the last legislative session, the Prince George's County delegation, they secured $20 million in state funding for Prince George's County's local housing trust fund. To my knowledge, this had never been done before. This is a first. And when I spoke with the housing director in Prince George's County, they plan to ask for another $20 million again in 2023. There's no reason why Montgomery County shouldn't be making a similar request. Just to give you some context, this past year in Montgomery County, it surpassed a milestone. It surpassed $100 million in annual funding for affordable housing for the first time, but $40 million of this was one-time resources that won't be available next year. So unless there's some new resources that become available magically, we're set to see a pretty steep drop off in what the county is able to invest in affordable housing. And I spoke with the county executive a few weeks ago about this, and he's fully in support of this and aware of it. I appeal to all of you and any of you to please help make this happen, whether it's $1 million, $5 million, $10 million, or $20 million, like Prince George's County plans to ask. I think we really need to start somewhere and hopefully plant that seed, and maybe we can build off of that in the future. But if Prince George's County is doing this, so should we. We get money from the federal government, the state, and the county invests tens of millions of dollars of its own money, but we really need the state to play a bigger role in preserving and constructing affordable housing in Montgomery County. So I'm happy to help in any way I can, but I'm really looking to you to champion this. And please help make this happen in 2023. So thank you.
Chris, thank you very much. Janice Zinc-Sartucci.
Thank you on behalf of the Parents Coalition for the opportunity to speak this evening. First, we would like to remind the delegation that the Justice Reinvestment Act of 2016 included allowing sex offenders to have their records expunged and their names removed from the Maryland Sex Offender Registry. We now have a list of former MCPS teachers who were convicted of sexually abusing school children, sentenced and put on the Maryland Sex Offender Registry, who have now had their convictions and sex offender registry entries expunged. Why were sex offenders who were sentenced to lifetime registration included in this legislation? The Netflix documentary, The Keepers, focused on Maryland's legislature and how the Maryland legislature protects sex offenders. Is this really the international reputation that we want for Maryland, a sex offender-friendly state? The presence of the Catholic Church's sex offender facility in Silver Spring brings more international attention to Maryland, along with concerns about reporting and registration of the sex offenders that are sent to the St. Luke's Institute. Second, we would like to thank the Maryland Office of Legislative Audits for substantiating my investigation into the MCPS bus camera procurement. The OLA report noted the MCPS bus camera procurement lacked a competitive procurement process, lacked financial terms, and didn't monitor the vendor's investment costs. Third, we would like to thank the OLA office for revealing the embezzlement that had been uncovered in October of 2021 involving the MCPS Transportation Department and the MCPS Transportation vendor. Without this 6-year audit, would the public have ever heard about this multi-million-dollar embezzlement of MCPS funds? Fourth, not addressed in the OLA report, was that the MCPS use of electric school buses was from a company that did not participate in the MCPS RFP process and did not bid. The company didn't even exist until a few weeks before the Board of Education voted to award them a $168 million contract. And when the electric school bus company being used by MCPS was incorporated, it was incorporated the same address as the diesel school bus company involved in the off-the-books embezzlement scheme referenced earlier in the OLA report. Does the public have to wait another 6 years for an OLA report to find out who owns the electric school buses that MCPS students are riding on, and what is their connection to the diesel school bus company that the Board of Ed is no longer doing business with? Fifth, what is the cost of all this subterfuge? At least $500,000 in overpayments for diesel school buses in August. The Board of Ed was told this purchase was an emergency, but we now know that this purchase was an attempt to hide the fact that the board's longtime school bus dealer had been involved in an embezzlement scheme and a new dealer was quickly needed. Covering up crimes against children is costly to classrooms and to children's lives. Will this be the year that the Maryland legislature decides to put children first? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Janice. Appreciate your sharing that with us. Next, we have Jason Spiegel, please.
Good evening. I'm the president of the Maryland Military Coalition, a registered nonprofit, nonpartisan group of Maryland military and veterans organizations that represent over 150,000 service members, veterans, retirees, families, and survivors. The Maryland Military Coalition urges the Montgomery County delegation to support legislation fully exempting military retired pay from Maryland state income tax. Maryland law currently exempts the first $15,000 of military retirement pay for taxpayers over 55 years of age. By contrast, 38 other states fully exempt military retirement and survivor pay from their state income tax, with only one of those states having an age restriction. Significantly, since 2018, the last year Maryland increased its current exemption, 23 of those states have changed their laws to fully exempt military retirement pay from their state income tax. Significantly, the 4 states that border Maryland all exempt all or a much higher amount of military retirement pay from state income tax than Maryland does. Each year, thousands of military personnel stationed in Maryland retire from active duty. A 2019 Towson University study requested by the General Assembly found that taxation of military retired pay is a major factor driving military retirees to consider living and working in other states. Military personnel range in age from their early 40s to early 50s when they retire. Their second careers with their taxable annual salaries can range from 15 to 25 years after they leave the military. When these individuals retire to states that don't tax their retired pay, Maryland loses the opportunity to benefit from the tax revenue generated by their second career, and our state's economy loses the opportunity to benefit from that additional disposable income. When they retire from a base in Maryland, military personnel can choose to live and work in Maryland or live and work somewhere else. Because of the rise in remote work, they can work for a Maryland employer while living in one of the 38 states that fully exempt military retirement from taxation. Exempting military retirement pay from the state income tax would be an incentive for those transitioning to civilian life to consider staying in Maryland, and would bring Maryland law in line with the 38 other states that fully exempt military retirement pay from state taxation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jason, and thank you for your service. Very much appreciated. So I'm going to ask that Diane Owens is up next. She would have been on the previous panel, and she is in place of Michael Beach. So if I'm correct, she is representing the Maryland Office of the Public Defender.
Good evening and thank you. I appreciate your time here. Mr. Beach did submit written remarks and I am standing in on his behalf. I am one of the district court supervisors here in Montgomery County and the district court. The Maryland Office of the Public Defender, MOPD, is the largest criminal legal service provider here in the state of Maryland, and Montgomery County is home to the fourth largest office, with our attorneys as well as our support staff active in the community and participating in outreach events and collaborating with grassroots partners on justice, safety, health, race, and poverty issues that affect the Montgomery County. The inextricable connection between crime, poverty, and race cannot be ignored, and when seeking solutions for effective and long-term public safety measures. We are coming to you as the Maryland Office of the Public Defender in anticipation for this legislative season, asking you to pay attention and please focus on, there are a number of issues, but here are some that we'd like to highlight. As of a month ago, the population of the Montgomery County detention centers was 61.3% Black/African American, compared to the most recent census data indicating that the county's population as a whole at 20.4% African American. Whether this is a product of over-policing of Black men, over-prosecution of Black men, or racial disparities and bail outcomes, or something else, it is a sign that something might not be right. Montgomery County is one of the most diverse and politically progressive counties in the country, but it seems to be flirting with the return to the 1990s tough on crime policies, patterns, and practices. The Montgomery County delegation, we ask that you please ensure that legislative priorities are mindful of this fact so that public safety concerns do not bring on an era of mass incarceration along with its ripple effects in the Black and brown families and in this community. We are asking you to focus on these three, ending automatic charging of adults, children as adults. We are also asking that you look at the limit and the role of legal cannabis in police investigations. The public has made its voice clear in support of the legalization of marijuana, as well as talking about how policing is to be done with regards to marijuana to ensure that people's rights are not infringed upon for legal conduct, to ensure that police did not continue to use the odor of marijuana to disproportionately stop, frisk, and search the vehicles of Black and brown persons in this community. And as well as the Maryland Office of the Public Defender has continually done less with more. We are asking that the pay parity be looked at with regards to the support and resources that we are asking for on a statewide level, but more importantly here in Montgomery County, our representation requires a greater investment from our state budget. Individual representation requires more time and resources based upon the proliferation of discovery, e-discovery, body-worn cameras, and advances in DNA. In addition to recent reforms, additional proceedings related to sentencing, involuntary commitment, Senate proceedings, as well as judiciary While judiciary funding has increased the number of judges resulting from these burdens, there has never been parity in increasing the Maryland Office of the Public Defender's positions to cover these additional courtrooms. We know that there are great things that are being done in Montgomery County, and we know that the Senate as well as the House members that are here on this Zoom call this evening have worked really hard in the past, and we look forward to a strong and fruitful partnership in anticipation of this upcoming legislative season. We are here to lend our support as well as our voice and our expertise, and to be a bridge between these committees and the communities that we serve.
Thank you, Ms. Owens, very much. Appreciate your testimony. Colleagues, do we have any questions or comments for the panel that is before us at the moment? Seeing none, we will move on to our next panel, which will be comprised of the following individuals: Diana Conway, Michael DeLong, Winston Berkman-Breen, Amy Chilada, Ben Wickner, Edwidge Taboo, and Carrie Promochik. I will remind all of you, please, that we have a 3-minute time limit. So please be very cognizant of that. We still have a very, very long list of individuals who are here to speak with us tonight. So would appreciate your assistance in keeping to that 3-minute time limit. So with that, Diana Conway, you are first up.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for holding tonight's hearing. I'm Diana Conway, president of the Montgomery County Women's Democratic Club, and I'm very pleased to present our 2023 priorities to the joint delegation. WDC is one of the largest, most active Democratic clubs in the county, and we work to promote progressive policies and elect Democrats to enact them with a focus on benefiting women and their families. We evaluate legislation through a racial, social, and economic equity lens. We look forward to working with you on bills toward the following goals. We support the preservation and expansion of affordable housing for low and moderate income families, precluding rent gouging and unjust evictions, and working toward the more than 40,000 more housing units we'll need in the next decade. Next, we have a large and growing aging population of both working and retired seniors who deserve economic security, healthy aging programs, compassionate elder care, and protections from fraud and abuse. We also cast a wide net for children and youth, including accelerating the implementation of the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, fully funding public schools and educational services, ensuring childcare facilities are compliant, safe, and accessible, and protecting children against violence and abuse, unsafe living arrangements, and food insecurity. We support criminal justice reform to address inequities at any point of contact with the criminal justice system and to eliminate the human rights abuses. Our advocacy for incarcerated women and children includes not trying young people as adults, eliminating the outrageous spousal immunity for rape and sexual assault, not criminalizing civil obligations that would create debtor prisons, and eliminating the school to prison pipeline. We specifically urge you to close the deal on unfinished business like the Women's Pre-Release Center, a longtime WDC concern. We're keenly aware of the importance of immigrants in our communities, and we support bills addressing the economic security, education, healthcare, and public safety of immigrant women and their children. We support access to cost-effective, efficient healthcare for all Marylanders, including women and children, people who work, people who are disabled, and those who are chronically underserved by the health system. And we support a state constitutional amendment to protect a woman's right to terminate her pregnancy up to the point of viability, as is codified currently. This also means protection for women and providers and data privacy, plus expanded access to obstetric health services, especially for vulnerable women, public funding for birth control services, and programs targeting the disturbing disparities in maternal health and birth outcomes, especially for Black women. Finally, we support alternative voting methods like ranked choice voting, which increase opportunities for women and women of color to run and win, and ensures office holders are elected by a majority rather than a plurality of voters. Our formal report has been distributed. We really look forward to working with you, and I give you a lot of credit for going up against Donald Trump's announcement tonight.
Thank you, Diana. Very much appreciate seeing you and your sharing your thoughts with us this evening. We're moving on to Michael DeLong, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Michael DeLong. I'm the president of the Montgomery County Young Democrats. We're an organization of young Democrats ages 14 to 34. We work to make Montgomery County and Maryland much better places to live, get more young people involved in politics, elect Democrats up and down the ballot. And since Maryland has a $2 billion budget surplus and incoming Governor Wes Moore has proposed a very impressive agenda, we urge you to seize this moment and enact sweeping reforms that will truly leave no one behind. First, we strongly support the blueprint for Maryland's future and urge you to fully fund early childhood and public school education over the next decade, which will result in substantial benefits for everyone as a whole. We also urge you to work on making childcare more affordable by expanding the early childhood workforce, scholarship funds, and to help prepare students for good paying jobs. We also urge you to remember students with excessive student loan debt and see if there is anything you can do to help them. For example, possibly by expanding the student loan debt relief tax credit program, helping them get access to debt counseling. We also strongly support legislators writing rules to set up the recreational cannabis marketplace. The Hogan administration has undermined the state government and workforce over the last 8 years. Rebuilding departments and attracting talented people should be a top priority, and the legislature should see if they can help that out with that however they can. Housing costs they've become a really big problem for Marylanders. It has a lot of aspects. There are a lot of people who are struggling to afford their rent or mortgages or are facing evictions. We strongly support the Stable Homes Act to give renters additional rights, protect them against unjust evictions, and we strongly support the building of more housing in order to lower prices, especially affordable housing. And people facing eviction, they should have the right to good legal representation. Transportation is another area where we hope the legislature will make great strides. We ask you to dedicate additional resources to improving our bus system, help complete the Purple Line and help the businesses around it who've been impacted by its construction, improve the contracting process to stop cost overruns and delays. And we also strongly urge the legislature to revive the Red Line transit program that Hogan canceled. And other things, Wes Moore and Aruna Miller have pledged to boost the economy for all Marylanders. That includes supporting unions and higher wages and better working conditions. We urge you to make one of your top priorities to do the accelerated implementation of the 15 per hour minimum wage, link this wage to inflation so it automatically goes up, and make it easier for Marylanders to join unions and engage in collective bargaining. Finally, we urge you to strongly support Wes Moore's proposal for a statewide service year program. This would help a lot of Maryland high school graduates. It would fund a lot of good projects. It's an excellent idea that has potential to inspire a lot of young people, and you should do its part to get it off the ground. Thank you again for hearing us, and contact us if you have any questions.
Michael, thank you very much. We have Winston up next. Winston Berkman-Breen.
Senator Kramer, I think he may not be joining us this evening. We just got word of that.
I beg your pardon?
I think he will not be joining us.
Will not. Okay, thank you for sharing that. In that case, we are moving on to Amy.
Yes. Good evening, delegates and senators. Thank you all for the work that you do to serve Montgomery County residents and for convening this hearing in advance of next year's legislative session. My name is Amy Salata, and I'm the Outreach and Advocacy Manager at the Student Borrower Protection Center, a policy nonprofit focused on ending the burden of student debt in the country. My goal this evening is to dispel the idea that student debt is purely a federal matter and to highlight the many, many ways in which state policymakers can take action to help their residents. Given tonight's time limits, I will follow up with written comments in greater detail. But in short, states are the primary consumer protection body for most of the financial sector, including student loans. And states regulate non-bank lenders, student loan servicers, debt collectors, and schools, and dictate court procedures when residents are sued. Here are just a few of the policies that we are working on with Maryland stakeholders that would benefit Montgomery County residents. First, protecting borrowers who are sued to collect private student loans. In a report we issued last year in partnership with the Maryland Consumer Rights Coalition and SEIU Local 500, we found that Montgomery County was the county in the state with the second highest number of residents who had been sued by a notoriously unlawful private student loan company. The county saw 201 of these cases from 2015 to 2021. We have supported a bill by Delegate Lopez to establish common sense evidentiary requirements when a creditor sues in Maryland courts to collect on private student loans, which will prevent fraudulent creditors from obtaining court judgments. Second, establish a private student lender registry. Although Maryland borrowers owe approximately $3 billion in private non-federal student loans, the state currently doesn't know who is doing this business in the state. Maine, Colorado, Illinois, Louisiana, and California have passed laws that require these private lenders to identify themselves and report on their annual activities, and Maryland could do the same. Finally, establish an institutional debt registry. Not all private student debts are owed to banks. Some are owed to schools. When students fall behind on these debts, they are prevented from completing their educations and can even be sued. Although we know the harmful effects these debts and collection practices have on residents, only the schools themselves know these debts' full scope and balance. By requiring schools to merely report on these debts annually to the state, lawmakers would be able to make data-driven decisions about how to help students, reduce financial burdens, and improve state workforce outcomes. Again, these are just a few of the state-level student debt policies we're currently working on with our partners for next year's session, but are certainly not the only ways that states can step in to protect borrowers' rights and their residents. We at the Student Borrower Protection Center welcome the opportunity to be a resource for you and all of your constituents. I'd be happy to answer any questions or follow up with members of the delegation. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. We appreciate that. Do we have Ben Wickner with us?
Yes, I am here and I apologize. Pardon the fact that I am braving the rain and doing kid drive and dog training graduation. It all fell tonight. Thank you very much. So anyway, but I am glad to be here with you all. Thank you, Chair Polakovich Carr, and the many here who have invited us to be a part of this. It's just great to be with the wonderful elected official delegation of Montgomery County. And I do want to thank you for taking the time to hear from the voices of the people here in the county. For those who I haven't met yet, my name is Ben Wickner. I'm the pastor of Cross Community and the director of the Equity Center, a nonprofit located in Lake Forest, at least for the time being. We are part of the Tax Credits for Maryland Families Coalition. And I'm here this evening to advocate for the extension of the Maryland EITC and child tax credits. These credits are proven and powerful means to assist low-income working families and to alleviate child poverty. The public data shows the effectiveness of these tools, but I also want to attest from many personal interactions with members of the low-income and immigrant community that we serve here in Gaithersburg and Montgomery Village of the significant impact that they are having. Last year, when the Assembly passed SB 218, by the way, sponsored, of course, by District 39's very own Senator King. Thank you for your leadership, Senator King, for that, which made Maryland only one of 3 states to allow I-10 filers to access the Earned Income Tax Credit, the state EITC. And then when the county council followed suit with expedited Bill 1421, doing the same with the Working Families Income Supplement, Montgomery County became the only county in America to give a 100% federal equivalent EITC to I-10 filers. Okay. Now, your leadership inspired us to get to work in our community. And it made it possible for us to help working singles and families access these powerful poverty alleviating credits. In our first year of operation as a VitaSite, we certified 21 volunteers. We saved low-income clients nearly $45,000 in tax prep fees, and we brought home $574,000 in refunds and credits in our first year. Now, in doing this, we learned up close how important the EITC and CTC are for low-income families. I mean, for many, this was a game changer. So we in following up with interviewing our clients, we found out that the refunds were used to pay down debilitating credit card debt, make significant and otherwise would have been unaffordable purchases like getting a car to drive to work, as well as starting a savings account. This was quite normal. You can imagine how happy and grateful these individuals were. Believe it or not, they are eager and excited to file their taxes again this year. I know that might sound strange to some of you, but yes, they are. Many of our clients would not have filed without the hope of accessing these credits. And for sure, they would not have received this kind of help for their improvement and well-being without these credits. So shrinking or sunsetting or discontinuing the state EITC and CTC, or disqualifying I-10 filers once again from accessing these credits, this will have a harmful, deleterious consequence for members of the hardworking and immigrant people in the state. The data on the impact of the EITC includes
And can I ask that you wrap it up for us, please? We're well
Yes, of
beyond
course.
the 3 minutes. Thank you.
Have I really? Okay, my apologies. Well, I'm going to skip some of the data that you already know, but we're just urging that and asking that these expandings and be made permanent for the EITC and CTC. And I want to thank you for your bold leadership in creating that this past year. I want to intro my colleague Edwidge, who has her own testimony about this. I'll turn it over to her. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ben. And yes, Edwidge, you're up next.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Chairs, vice chair, and members of the committee, good evening, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. My name is Edwidge Tebu, and I serve as a community JEDI at the Equity Center Cross Community. We call ourselves JEDIs because we work to advance justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion in our communities. I am here on behalf of the Tax Credit for Maryland Families Coalition, and on behalf of members of my community in the Gettysburg, Montgomery Village area as well. I would like to talk about the importance of increasing vital sites in our community. As you may know, the Equity Center was the only new vital site in Montgomery, in Upper Montgomery County last year. I had the privilege of participating in this program as a vital site coordinator in the span of 2 months. We've served about 210 families with their tax return and brought about a little over $790,000 in returns directly into the community. For many of those families, it was their first time having their taxes done at no cost. And for some, it was their first time filing taxes altogether. During that tax season, I learned 2 important things about taxes. That tax preparation can be costly, and for the common folks in our communities, the preparation fee can be a big chunk of their return. I remember a couple passing by the center one day and realized we were offering free tax preparation, and they were so shocked because they had just had theirs done at the renowned facility, but were charged about $600 for it. Something else I learned is that because of those hefty prices, people tend to turn to individual tax preparer for lower cost. However, these so-called tax preparers help file taxes using less recommendable methods to get maximum returns and attract clients, with no regard whatsoever to the consequences the clients might face in the future once it's audited by the IRS. I fell victim to the latter. I used a tax preparer for my returns for several years because his fee was 50% less than the one I was paying at the non-tax preparation office. It took an application for an immigration visa, an audit from the IRS, and my training as a vital volunteer to realize that my returns were not reflecting the changes in my financial activities, nor the changes in my status throughout the years, even though I would provide all documentation stating otherwise to the tax preparer. And further investigation made me realize that a lot of people in my community were facing similar issues. Having a trusted vital site where people can confidently have their taxes done at no cost in a correct and efficient manner will not only encourage people to file their taxes every year without burdening themselves, but in my opinion, it will also help alleviate the work of the IRS while auditing. Expanding and making permanent improvement to the EITC and CTC will help Maryland families and communities greatly, but we must also invest in facilities and services to help the population it is intended for to better access this program in a safe, efficient, and equitable manner. Thank you again for your opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that, Edwidge. And the last member of this panel is Carrie.
Yes. Thank you for giving me time to talk this evening. My name is Carrie Promozic, and I am with Cross Community. I'm advocating for childcare and early childhood development as a top priority here in Montgomery County and Maryland. Do we really want to narrow the achievement gap? We have been talking about it for years, and we have to actually do something about it to show our communities we value education at the earliest stages. The basics is the answer. It is a program that focuses on early childhood brain development through 5 basic principles. 1, maximize love, manage stress. 2, count, group, and compare. 3, talk, sing, and 4, explore through movement and play. And 5, read and discuss stories. The basic philosophy can be implemented in statewide from preschools, community centers to businesses with some very basic strategies that will support our youngest and our future. Over 20 years ago, I was a teacher in MCPS. And what were we talking about back then? The achievement gap. We were talking about how to get our first and second graders up on grade level. We were planning extra reading groups before and after school. And here we are still talking about the same achievement gap day over 20 years later. Research says it's all about being ready for kindergarten. And to be ready for kindergarten, you need to be for pre-K. Cultivating young people to be college and career ready has something to do with being pre-K ready. Montgomery County can be on the cutting edge of change in our education system by implementing the basics principles statewide, countywide to prepare our youngest for the early years of school. Funding is always a concern. Maybe consider tax revenue from new cannabis businesses. It could be transformative. Our future is our children, and early childhood development and childcare must be prioritized. The achievement gap seems like an age-old story we are still trying to figure out. What will the next 20 years be like? Will we start talking about the achievement gap in 2042? We don't have to. Montgomery County can choose to make our youngest learners the priority with the basics. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Carrie. Very much appreciate that. Very relevant and important testimony you shared with us. Colleagues, that was the last person for this panel. Do we have any questions or comments for any of our panelists that we have before us? I don't see any. So I thank the panel very much for your time and your testimony. And Madam Chair, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Next up, we're going to start our panel with Yannette Emanuel, followed by Christopher Dews, and then I'll call the other names after that. But Yannette, you can go ahead and get started.
Good afternoon, members of the House and Senate delegation. My name is Yannette Emanuel, Public Policy Director with the ACLU of Maryland, and thank you all for making the time for me to present to you all today. As you know, the ACLU of Maryland advocates on a broad range of issues, but tonight I want to highlight a couple of issues we expect to dedicate the significant time and resources to this legislative session. 2 years ago, the Maryland General Assembly took an important first step in achieving police accountability by passing the Maryland Police Accountability Act of 2021. Over the last year, the ACLU and our partners at the Maryland Coalition for Justice and Police Accountability have been working to support the implementation of these boards across the state. In many jurisdictions, the community made themselves loud and clear that so long as police are the only ones able to investigate the police, the repeal of Leo Bohr would be utterly meaningless and circumvent the PAB's ability to adequately provide oversight. Since the passage of the 2021 law, attempts to empower PABs with investory powers have been blocked, primarily due to improper claims made by the FOP about what the authority local governing bodies have to give these boards independent investory powers. As a result, in those jurisdictions where there is an independent body with investigatory powers, and those bodies are now replaced by the PAB model, these communities are left with a weaker system of police accountability than what they had before the repeal of Leobor. To address this problem, we're seeking to pass legislation this session to simply clarify that local jurisdictions do in fact have the authority to grant their police accountability boards the power to conduct such investigations. Another important issue we'll be working on this legislative session is to protect Black and Brown Marylanders from being disproportionately and unnecessarily targeted and searched by police due to the odor of marijuana. As most of you know, marijuana is often used as an excuse for police to stop and search people, disproportionately persons of color. And in fact, police using the odor of marijuana as the basis of their public safety strategy has resulted in lazy policing and no skills developed to actually solve serious crime. Now that the recreational use of marijuana is legal and the odor associated with the use of a legal substance should no longer be used as a gateway to entanglement with the police and the legal system. For decades, the police have been granted the authority to conduct searches based solely on based on something that cannot be categorically proven, a claim based solely on their sense of smell. These cumbersome claims have routinely been used to infringe on individuals' right to privacy and justify racial profiling. The majority of Marylanders agree that this is an issue that needs to be addressed. Last year, we conducted a poll and found that 65% of Marylanders agree that police should be prohibited from using the odor of marijuana to conduct the search, and 32% who do not currently support legalization say this makes them more likely to do so. So the session will be working with our partners to ban odor searches, and we hope to have your support, and I'm happy to answer any questions you all may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Christopher Dews and Iona Stoka after him with the Job Opportunities Task Force.
I can go ahead and start. I'm sorry. Hi. First of all, thank you, members of the delegation, for taking the time to actually hold this hearing. I am Christopher Dews, Senior Policy Advocate of the Job Opportunities Task Force, as well as the Chair for the People's Commission to Decriminalize Poverty. And I just wanted to highlight one very specific policy priority that I'm sure many of the panel may already be familiar with, and that is criminal record expungements. Having a record is both the cause and consequence of poverty, a major cause and consequence of poverty in the state of Maryland, and it blocks access to employment, education, housing, and a variety of other things, specifically after a person has served their time, has done parole and probation, and is trying to get back to their lives. So we are actually pushing a piece of legislation called the REDEEM Act. We've kind of simplified it and clarified it. And what this bill simply says is after a person has served their entire sentence, done parole and probation, has completed supervision, and is now back to their lives, right now, if you have a misdemeanor charge, you have to wait 10 more years after you are free before you can get that expunged. And we want to reduce that to 3 years. Nonviolent felonies, you have to wait 15 more years after you've been fully released and off the books before you can get that expunged. So all we're simply saying is we want to reduce that misdemeanor window from 10 years to 3 years, and that nonviolent felony window from 15 years to 5 years, as other states have done, so more individuals will have better access to employment, housing, education, and the rest. The second piece of legislation is also expungement related, has to do with non-convictions, acquittals, dismissals, and null pros. So you were not necessarily found guilty by the courts. We don't think that should be used against you when trying to apply for a job or to go to a school. So we simply would like to see those shielded this session. We're pushing legislation on that. And the last bill that we are considering is a good cause expungement bill, which gives the courts the power to expunge a record specifically if they deem fit that there's a good cause for it. So it's a judicial discretion bill. Expungements are a big boon to the elimination of poverty, as well as getting people back to work and employed. It's called it's the Second Chance Initiative. So we would love support on that capacity for the People's Commission to decriminalize poverty in Maryland. So with that, I thank you for your time, and I'll pass it over to my colleague.
Good evening. My name is Ioana Stoica, and I'm a policy advocate for JOTF, a nonprofit organization that works to remove barriers to employment, especially for low-income workers. As my colleague Chris just mentioned, our agenda this upcoming year is multifaceted and includes improving transportation options, broadening access to affordable housing, lessening criminal record expungement periods, and also ensuring equitable implementation of the Time to Care Act. Today, I wanted to focus my testimony on a priority bill for us this upcoming session that will prohibit a health occupations board from denying a license, certificate, or registration to an immigrant if that individual meets all educational, training, or professional requirements. This bill effectively allows an individual to use either a social security number or an individual taxpayer identification number, an ITIN, to apply for an occupational license in a healthcare field. And I'm going to lay out some of the arguments for this bill. First, the licensing boards have no jurisdiction in immigration enforcement. So a healthcare occupational board's goal or mandate is simply to determine if an individual possesses the professional qualifications to do the job. Second, as the State Board of Nursing stated in their testimony on this bill earlier this year, there are individuals who have obtained an ITIN who may be authorized to work, but who do not have a social security number. And as of this moment, they are not able to obtain a license in the state of Maryland. Third, there are pathways for individuals to be employed without a social security number by using an ITIN that do not run afoul of federal laws. So for example, including through independent contracting work or by starting their own business or co-op. Fourth, the occupational licensing social security number requirement does not align with the recent direction of the state policy. So for example, Maryland has opened up in-state tuition and free community college to undocumented students, and also has granted stimulus assistance to non-citizens. Our state is losing the investment that we are making in these individuals by preventing them from working. And fifth, Maryland is also bucking national trends as more states are opening up licensure via an ITIN. So for example, in the case of nursing in New Jersey, California, Nevada, and Arizona, some of which these states also have reciprocity agreements with Maryland in some of the health occupations. The requirement on license applications for social security numbers keeps qualified individuals out of the healthcare workforce at a time when the healthcare crisis has escalated and as historical shortages are significantly impacting care in the state. Broadening access to employment for qualified individuals will not only benefit the state of Maryland economically, but will also improve public safety as people seek out certification instead of circumventing it due to SSN requirements. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share this bill with you today, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you so much for your testimony, right on time. Next, we'll have Nicole Hanson-Mundell, followed by Suzanti Follingstad. Nicole, you can go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you all for continuing to keep this going as constituents of Maryland, advocates of Maryland present to you. I'm Nicole Hanson-Mundell, the Executive Director of Out for Justice. Out for Justice is a grassroots organization, one of the leading organizations in Maryland of formerly and currently incarcerated people who take a keen interest in policy reform and believes that we formerly incarcerated people should be at the center of policy reform happening in Maryland. You'll hear from my colleague Elena Williams as well, but we also want to engage our lawmakers and partners into ensuring that your laws and policy include some timelines for the agency to pursue your policy, some levels of accountability to ensure that what is the accountability to not pursuing your laws and policies in this state, and some budgetary commitments to the policies that you will introduce. One of the key pieces of legislation that we want you all to continue to keep your eyes on and support is our women's pre-release facility. We know that the Senate has allocated some necessary dollars to begin the implementation of pre-release. This is a situation where women coming out of our prison jails have nowhere to go. They don't know to look left or to look right. And as women who are the breadwinners of our families, we need to be able to have the support we need coming out of our prisons and jails. Another key piece of issue and policy that we want you all to take notice to is a piece of legislation that your colleague in Montgomery County introduced, Delegate Janelle Wilkins, HB 222. You all will see a jail voting report coming out by advocates where we toured the state of Maryland and every local jail to ensure that HB 222 was implemented. And we want to come back to make this law stronger and ensure ballot access for all those who are eligible to vote. And lastly, as I pass it over to my colleague, Elena, is ensuring that we are not continuously engaging in predatory practices that prevent parents from parenting. And we are finding that in our membership that the CPS system is an unregulated system here in Maryland, and it's capturing women and caretakers into this vicious cycle in the CPS system. So we really want you all to pay attention to policies that are coming out from that particular agency. And I'll pass it over to my colleague, Elena.
That'd be fine. That was my mistake. Go ahead, Elena.
That's no problem. My name is Elena McWilliams. I'm the Policy and Research Coordinator at Out for Justice, and I won't reiterate our mission, but I want to let you know that something that's unique about our organization is we are not connecting the legislators to some other group that is impacted by a certain policy, in this case, criminal legal system policy. Our organization is comprised of, led by people who are directly impacted by this system. And so when you are looking for voices about the on-the-ground impact of the policies you are considering, we are here. We are in this room. You don't need to go through anybody to get to us. We are here and we are ready to give you feedback on maybe some of the nuances you might not, with all good intention, notice might be absent or might be leading to unintended consequences in any of your criminal legal system policies. And so as we've developed our legislative agenda, it is developed straight from our members who are directly impacted by this system. And some of the top priorities that they have told us to focus on are the dangerous and unjust deprivation conditions behind the walls of our prisons and jails in Maryland, which, although we believe our members should be free, while they are behind the walls, they are enduring further trauma. Additionally, we, like JOTF, we believe in expanding opportunities post-criminal legal system involvement, and they've spoken to that very well. We also believe in making sure that folks who have the right to vote behind the walls actually have access to that right, and that's been a difference that we've noticed with implementation. And another big area of challenge that we would just urge you all to pay attention to is all of the barriers and injustices that folks experience pre-trial. So somebody who's been accused, charged with a crime, may find themselves waiting behind bars for months on end, may not have access to adequate representation, not because the public defender's office doesn't want to provide it, but because of the limitations within our systems and restrictions within our systems that get in the way of providing that. And we have many other priorities, and I can't capture them here, but I urge you to come to us. We're right here and we're ready to speak to you and give our input.
Thank you very much. Next up, we'll have Susanti Follingstad, followed by Anna Levy.
Hi, my name is Susanti Follingstad. I live in Rockville, and I'm testifying on behalf of the Silver Spring Justice Coalition, which also submitted detailed written testimony. First, Speaker Jones and President Ferguson said that mental health legislation is a priority for 2023. We believe any such legislation must include a focus on reducing police responses to mental and behavioral health crises. Our county police department's most recent use of force report reveals greatly increasing use of force against people in mental health crises. Because of our advocacy, the county created 3 mobile crisis outreach teams. However, the dispatch and triage protocols still predominantly involve a police response. We need legislation that encourages and supports local jurisdictions to prioritize non-police responses to mental health crises. Second, SSJC supports legislation that would clarify that local jurisdictions can grant their police accountability boards independent powers to investigate. The administrative charging committees have limited powers to request additional information, and police still control the investigation, including the collection of evidence. Meaningful civilian oversight is necessary to transparency and accountability in policing and cannot happen unless the civilian body has the power to conduct their own investigations. Third, the implementation of Anton's Law in the state ranges from bumpy to disastrous, with police departments and unions engaging in obstructionist tactics. For example, our county executive entered into a memorandum of agreement that, contrary to Anton's law, gives officers in the FOP 10 days notice before releasing misconduct records. Now, our FOP is suing the county to challenge the release of records and to declare the law unconstitutional. We hope you will fix implementation problems such as excessive fees and prohibit obstructionist agreements like the one here. Fourth, now that cannabis use is legal, the legislature must prohibit searches and seizures based solely on the odor of marijuana. We know that arrests and prosecutions for possession of marijuana are rooted in racially biased policing practices, particularly during traffic stops. A recent county report showed that Black drivers were 43% of searches, 38% of arrests during traffic stops, despite being only 18% of the adult population. Latinx drivers were 31% of searches, 35% of arrests, while only 19% of the adult population. Ending odor-based searches and seizures is a necessary first step to stop these disparities. We thank you for considering our priorities and look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Anna Levy, go right ahead.
Hi, I'm Anna Levy. I live in Rockville in District 16, and I'm the co-chair of Jews United for Justice's statewide labor and housing justice team. JUFJ organizes 6,000 Jewish Marylanders and allies to advocate for social, racial, and economic justice issues at the state and local level. As a Jewish organization, it was scary and painful to see anti-Semitic graffiti found once again yesterday in Bethesda. Threats to our safety are part of the same machinery that endangers so many marginalized communities. Through partnership, JUFJ aims to undo systemic oppression, and through the following legislative priorities, we're working to make our region safer and more equitable for everyone. We're thrilled that you passed the Time to Care Act last session so that all Maryland workers can take paid time off to care for themselves and their loved ones. Please support legislation to ensure that the Family and Medical Leave Insurance Fund is implemented equitably with a contribution rate that is fair, especially for tipped and low-income workers. The bill should also clarify that all other paid time off need not be exhausted before using the fund. This benefits both employers and employees. Eviction rates are higher than ever, rents are skyrocketing, and rental assistance funds are running out. The General Assembly must address these problems through rent stabilization and emergency rental assistance. Last year, Governor Hogan vetoed a bill meant to prevent illegally operating landlords from using the expedited eviction process. It must be made law this session. Police violence continues to ravage Black and Brown communities. To ensure that the intent of the historic 2021 reforms is reflected in practice, the General Assembly must uphold Anton's law and demand transparency in police disciplinary records. True community oversight of police requires allowing local jurisdictions to grant police accountability boards the authority to hire independent investigators and investigate misconduct complaints. The practice of automatically charging kids as adults must end. It is unjust and furthers racial inequities. We urge the General Assembly to right this wrong. Kids are kids, and their cases should be dealt with in a system that meets their needs. Everyone should have access to quality and life-saving health services, regardless of their income or immigration status. We urge you to expand Medicaid and ACA eligibility to include those who are undocumented. And finally, the MDGA should follow the lead of many states and local jurisdictions, including the Montgomery County Council, and adopt hybrid hearings to maximize the public's engagement in the legislative process. Returning to business as usual will exclude people with health and mobility concerns and those without access to transportation or childcare from participating in our state's democracy. All Marylanders deserve the opportunity to advocate for themselves in Annapolis, whether in person or virtually. Let's continue building a Maryland that works for us all.
Thank you very much. Our next and potentially last witness for this panel is Coney Serrana Portillo. And I'll just say, if I don't believe Alex Vasquez or Larry Stafford are on the call, but if they are, if there's someone here in their place, they will have the opportunity to testify as well. But go ahead, Ms. Portillo.
Good evening, Chair and delegation. That's correct. Alex will not be joining us tonight, so I'll be the last person speaking. My name is Connie Serrano. I'm a research and policy analyst at CASA, and I want to first thank the delegation for all your support last year during the Healthy Babies Equity Act. We were very thrilled to ensure that mothers in Maryland get the health care that they need, and we're very much looking forward to the implementation of that program. With that being said, this year we're asking for you to continue supporting CASA's top priority, which is removing the immigration status as a requirement for enrollment in both Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act. Many of you are familiar with our robust Health and Human Services Department, where our office works closely with low-income and uninsured populations. And in many ways, Montgomery County has already been leading the way in healthcare with programs like Montgomery Cares. However, we really need a statewide action to ensure that everyone is covered. Healthcare is our top priority. I think we all know that COVID highly impacted communities of color. These were folks that were primary caregivers, that were frontline workers, and we really believe that they deserve healthcare. And so as we look into the future and the possibilities for Bear Maryland, we urge the delegation to support healthcare expansion legislation that will allow immigrants, regardless of status, into the Affordable Care Act and the Medicaid program. And we really urge the delegation to support protecting the life and treating all people with dignity, respect, and care. So thank you so much for your leadership.
Thank you. Do any members of the delegation have any questions for any witnesses in this panel? Okay, seeing none, I will thank all of these panelists, and we will move on to the next panel. It's our last panel of organizational representatives. We will be starting with Susan Karen, followed by Scott Weber. Go ahead, Susan.
Great. Thank you. So I am Susan Karen, and I am the chair of Peace Action Montgomery. We have about 1,500 members in the county, and we are a chapter of the nation's largest grassroots peace organization. In 2019, we began an initiative focused on challenging the influence of Hindu fascism, or Hindutva, in American politics. Like other Montgomery County residents who will be testifying tonight, we would like to ask the Montgomery County delegation to consider a resolution to denounce Hindutva ideology and its attempts into American politics. So a little bit about their history. The Hindu fascist movement was founded in 1931 when B.S. Mounier returned from a visit with Benito Mussolini, who mentored him in supremacist ideologies and military tactics. A member of his paramilitary, the RSS, was responsible for the assassination of Gandhi. Today, India is governed by Prime Minister Modi, who is a former RSS member and a current BJP party leader. His regime has been incredibly brutal in implementing his party's supremacist ideology, which doesn't recognize the rights of over 300 million citizens, including Muslims, Christians, Sikhs, and lower caste Hindus. In response last year, the Alliance Against Genocide, which represents 100 NGOs, expelled the Hindu American Foundation, which is a U.S. Hindu group, because of its allegiance to the Modi regime. While at face value, I believe everyone should be concerned about the issue of fascism, whether international or domestic, it is also important to note that these Hindutva influences have dangerously been permeating into state politics, school curriculums, and both political parties. Congressman Ro Khanna, who is Hindu, has said, "It's the duty of every American politician to reject the Hindutva and speak for equal rights for Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Buddhists, and Christians." The U.S. House of Representatives has a resolution, H.R. 1196, which condemns India's human rights violations and the Modi regime. Congressman Raskin, Trone, and Sarbanes are all co-sponsors. I hope that you, our state representatives, might take a similar stand with regard to influences in Maryland. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Scott Weber, to be followed by Mary Ann Hardy.
Thank you, esteemed members of the MoCA delegation. For the record, Scott Weber, founder of the Vaping Awareness Public Education Society. We're a public research health organization based in Bethesda. My goal for today is to have each of you actually individually regard me as the most memorable speaker of the evening, and for two reasons. Number one, Facts suggest that my suggested priority will save more money and save more lives than in all the other priorities you're going to hear about tonight combined. Number two, I think Maryland should start a civil war, one that will hopefully spread throughout the country, and I'll get back to that later. The Vape Society focuses on public health policy, and as everybody here who knows me will attest, I'm a passionate advocate for harm reduction. For the benefit of those not familiar with the concept, in its simplest form, harm reduction is a strategy to reduce any harm by choosing or developing policy to affect the least harmful of any viable alternatives. When it comes to harm, nothing in this entire state is more singularly harmful than smoking. Smoking is the most deadly and costly habit known to mankind. Smoking leads to more premature death than homicide, policeicide, suicide, 911 failures, pedestrian accidents, drug overdoses, and COVID combined. Thus, anything that can be done to reduce the harm of smoking will have greater net public benefit than any other priority you'll hear about tonight, bar none. So concurrently, vaping has actually shown itself to be the single most effective solution for getting smokers to reduce or quit smoking with little to no harmful side effects. And incredulously, a mob of ill-reformed anti-data, anti-science, anti-fact zealots nationwide and in Maryland have been trying for years to demonize nicotine vaping. And this has to be reversed, but not only on its own merits, but in light of the fact that this very body is poised not only to decriminalize marijuana, but recreationalize it. With vaping being a significant mode of marijuana consumption, you're going to have a very serious credibility issue simultaneously promoting and demonizing vaping at the same time. So I am and I will be calling upon each of you who claim to be evidence-based and data-driven legislators to take a hard, renewed look at the proven benefits of highly regulated vaping and reject gaslighting, fear-mongering that may be pushed by anti-science and anti-vaping zealots. The end result in Maryland is the potential to save literally millions of lives and save many billions of dollars over the span of just one generation. All right, my last minute additional priority is civil war. Hate, bullying, discrimination have no place in Maryland. We should not tolerate anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, anti-Asian hatred, LGBTQ bigotry, gender bias, or any form of fascist supremacy ideology, period. Our dear friend Jamie Raskin recently held an event where he extolled the crowd to deny MAGA extremism a platform and not embrace fascism or supremacy in any form. We Marylanders need to heed these words, and we need to stay vigilant against the intrusion of haters into our institutions and call out all hateful acts, fascist rhetoric, supremacist organizations, and their associates, be it the Nazis, the KKK, the Proud Boys, or the Hindutva. Maryland should be at the front line of a civil war against hatred and bigotry while battling for tolerance, for compassion, and for civility. I'm mindful of the word nerds here, Senator Kagan, I'm looking at you. I guess this should be more accurately a call for civility war. But by whatever name, let's make Maryland the epicenter and let's showcase and model our battle plan with the hope that our war for civility spreads nationwide. And I apologize for running over slightly, but in light of the disgusting act of hatred discovered along the Bethesda trolley trail yesterday, we must prioritize civility and denounce hatred with unanimity, mindful that bigots, haters, supremacists are all around us, even in Montgomery County, and yes, even in Annapolis. It's all too often in plain sight. So civility must triumph, and hate can not have a place here. Please make civility a top priority for the Montgomery County delegation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't believe Marianne Hardy is in the room. I'll give her a second to speak up in case she is. Otherwise, we will move on to Linda Clausen. I see Linda is in the room. Ask her to unmute. I don't believe Marianne Hardy is in the room. I'll give her a second to speak up in case she is. Otherwise, we will live stream. We are ready for you. There we go.
Oh.
Room.
I'm sorry. Am I speaking?
Yes, you are in the Zoom room. You are now in the meeting and you are free to take your 3 minutes for your testimony.
Oh,
Hardy is
all
in
right,
the room.
thank
I'll
you.
give her a second to speak up in
Good
case she
evening,
is.
members of the
I'm sorry, Linda, can you turn off the live stream on YouTube? Close out your web browser so that we're not hearing that in the background.
Oh, the live stream. So what do I click on? I'm sorry. Am I speaking? I'm hearing something on that.
You are now in the meeting and you are free to take your. So, Linda, if you can close where you were watching the live stream of the meeting, you would have been doing that in your web browser. like Internet Explorer or Firefox or Chrome, that needs to get closed, and then then you can come off of mute and go ahead and give your testimony. And while Linda is working out her technical difficulties, I'll just make sure, I don't believe the other folks in this panel are in the room either. Fatmata Bari, Brian Anlu, or Therese Hessler. Are any of those folks present, or someone substituting for them? Okay, I don't think so. I'm going to ask Linda to unmute here, and we'll see if this has been worked out. Otherwise, we'll come back. I'll just make sure, I don't believe the other folks in this panel are in the room either. So Linda, it sounds like you're still having the same problems. I'm going to ask Matt, if you could please reach out to Linda and help her work through her technical difficulties, and we'll circle back to her. But meanwhile, Senator, let me go ahead and see if there's any questions for this panel. Not seeing any questions. I will turn this back over to Senator Kramer to take the first panel of individuals who've signed up. And Linda, we will circle back and once your technical difficulties have been resolved so that you can testify.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The following panel of individuals is comprised of Theodora Scorado, Robin Yasnow, Gayatri Garirajan, and Karen Lundgren. And I will share with you that members of this panel, you each have 2 minutes, and ask that you be very much aware of that 2 minutes, as we still have a number of people waiting to testify this evening. So with that, Theodora, you are up. Do we have Theodora with us? I don't see Theodora. So I'll tell you what, then let's move on to Robin. I see you're with us, so why don't you jump on in, Robin?
Great. Good evening. I'm Robin Yasano, a resident of Rockville and an advocacy volunteer with NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness in Montgomery County. Thank you for unanimously voting last session to fund Maryland's transition to 988, the national 3-digit number for the suicide prevention hotline. When somebody experiences a mental health crisis, as I did in 2016, calling 988 can connect people anytime, anywhere with a trained specialist who can make a world of difference. And I can personally attest to that. 988 in Maryland has state funding only through FY24. So I'm here tonight to ask you to secure 988's future in our state. Its introduction in June led to an increase in call volume to the hotline. If you look at monthly year-over-year data, 988 call volume in Maryland is up about 25%. And that means that people are getting help. More people are getting help without automatically calling 911 for an emergency dispatch or automatically just going to the emergency room, because both of those things can be very expensive and traumatic for the person in crisis. Of course, sometimes emergency responders and hospital visits are appropriate. 988 doesn't try to replace that, and crisis specialists can help callers weigh those options. Right now, 988 call centers in Maryland, including the folks at EveryMind in Montgomery County, are working harder than ever to respond to calls, as well as texts and chat sessions with people in crisis, including many young people. But the need at these call centers is greater than the resources available. Maryland 988 call centers do not yet meet the SAMHSA requirement of answering at least 90% of calls. And as I said, state funding for 988 runs out at the end of fiscal year 2024. You know, there are so many things that I could have come here and talked to you tonight about. Our whole crisis response system in Maryland needs work, but 988 is one area where Maryland is making progress, so we have to keep going. Mental health crises are on the rise, especially among teens and young adults. So I urge you and your colleagues in the Maryland General Assembly Please introduce and support legislation that enhances this vital service and integrates it more effectively into the wider crisis system. The lives and well-being of Marylanders are at stake. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you for that, Rob. And NAMI does great work, and we appreciate your being here this evening. Thank you for that. Pardon me, Gayatri?
Hi, good evening. My name is Gayatri Girirajan, and I have lived in Montgomery County my entire life. I'm speaking today, along with others, to request that the General Assembly pass a resolution denouncing the right-wing Hindu nationalist movement and its presence in state politics and other Maryland institutions. I was raised a Hindu, and I have watched this movement and its flagship organizations continue to assert their presence in not only my community's religious centers, but also in broader public life in Maryland institutions under the guise of cultural diversity. Hindu nationalism is a global movement to keep India for Hindus of high caste only and to shut other communities out. Affiliates of this movement in the United States have historically supported it by rallying their resources to fund right-wing organizations overseas and cultivating their influence here in the United States at all levels. The Vishwa Hindu Parishad of America, the American wing of a Hindu nationalist paramilitary organization, regularly hosts youth camps in Rockville and are an active member of a religious coalition with presence in influential interfaith spaces. In nearby Howard County, a school unknowingly hosted a teacher appreciation event with the Hindu Swayamsevak Sangh, another right-wing group. In Montgomery County, the school system has, again, completely unknowingly partnered with the right-wing group, the Hindu American Foundation. Representatives from similar Hindutva-affiliated organizations have made their way into local commissions, steering committees, and advisory groups, ostensibly to advise on policy from an Indian cultural perspective, but in reality to advise on policies from a supremacist, myopic lens. To pass a resolution condemning this movement would ensure that Montgomery County is a safer place for residents of all faiths and backgrounds and castes. It would empower residents who are affected by this to know that they will be heard if they speak up, and it would ensure that people at all levels are aware of how this movement operates. Thank you for your time and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Gayatri. Appreciate your sharing that with us. And we're moving on to Karen. You're up.
Good evening, Senator Kramer and Montgomery County delegation. My name is Karen Blundrigan, and I am testifying to request that a late bill be enacted to prevent the Office of the County Attorney from being able to represent the Housing Opportunities Commission, otherwise known as HOC, in any legal matters moving forward. This bill was enacted quite some time ago when HOC was much, much smaller. Today, HOC is very big and a multi-million-dollar corporation with 2 full-time attorneys on staff. They no longer need the assistance of the Office of the County Attorney. This is also an inherent conflict of interest, having the Office of the County Attorney represent HOC, as there have been numerous issues that have come up between the county and HOC that really presents major problems of objectivity and non-biasness. This is based on the Housing and Community Development Article, Section 12-308, Part B as in boy, whereby for legal services, an authority may use the chief law officer of the political subdivision or may employ its own counsel and legal staff. HOC has the resources to perform their legal work in-house or contracted out. They do not need the use of the Montgomery County Attorney. I urge you all to reconsider and pass this late bill. And I just want to say thank you very much for allowing me to testify here before you all this evening. I'm very grateful. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Karen. Very much appreciate you taking the time to share your thoughts with us. Colleagues, that ends testimony for this panel. Do we have any questions of any of the panel members? And I don't see any. So, Madam Chair, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. Our second to last panel will be Paul Geller, followed by Melissa McKenna, followed by Nathan Feldman and Ann Common. Go ahead, Paul. Stop all here. Speakers in the room.
Good evening. Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Go ahead.
I appreciate it. Good evening to all our senators and delegates, and congratulations to you, Chair Plakovich Carr, on your appointment. Well deserved. I'm here tonight to talk about casino gambling revenues. We need a lot more money for our schools statewide. We have over 1,400 public schools. And my sincere hope is that in the 2023 session in Annapolis, we will be able to have legislation move forward that will change the percentage of casino gaming revenues to be in favor of our students. For 2008 and 2012, we were asked to vote on two different referenda, and that was whether or not we would fund gambling for the primary purpose of education in this state. And right now, we're only getting 38.24% from video lottery terminals and a paltry 15% from table games. This is not the primary purpose of raising revenue. What I ask for is 50%. If we could get 50% across the board, that would raise, just in these two casino gambling items, over $363 million per year. This is a substantial increase in our state funding for our students. They deserve the best. They deserve this funding. And I would ask that you would put forward legislation at a percentage that is as close to 50% as possible, so that we can fund some of the many programs that we need for our students across the state. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Melissa McKenna, go ahead.
Good evening, senators and delegates. My name is Melissa McKenna. It's good to virtually see you. When all else fails, call on a higher power. Tonight, that would be you. I'm kicking it up a notch after many years of testifying to the Board of Ed and County Council. I'm here because our schools still need your help. Montgomery County Public Schools, MCPS, should only be designing and building net zero energy schools. As progressive as Montgomery County is, I'm sure you will be disappointed to learn that MCPS isn't even a runner-up in this category. Our net zero schools number is 0, with 0 in the pipeline. I commend the building construction provisions in the Climate Solutions Now Act of 2022. However, I have one large adjustment request. Please include public elementary and secondary schools as a covered building in Article 2, Section 1601. School facilities have been left out of building energy performance standards at both the county and state levels. Progress to reduce energy usage will not happen without accountability. Additionally, I doubt that the 5 percentage point funding bonus will entice the most reluctant district to build net zero energy on its own. There are 1,400 public schools in Maryland, 210 in MCPS alone. Considering that Seneca Valley High School is 457,600 square feet, that's a lot of energy and a lot of HVAC. There are 3 monster high schools in the capital improvements program with price tags of $190 million each. Net zero ready doesn't mean sticking solar panels on top later, but attention being paid to building orientation and massing to maximize daylight and a carefully insulated building envelope. As the saying goes, you need a solid foundation. MCPS is the most prolific school builder in the state. Net zero energy construction is now comparative to the cost of traditional building methods. It seems only state legislation will be able to move the needle towards net zero energy schools. Please consider amending the Climate Solutions Act to include public schools and maybe even revisit the Net Zero School Grant Fund for our students and our planet. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Nathan Feldman.
Good evening, and thank you for hosting this talk every year. It is very helpful. My name is Nathan Feldman. I am an incoming member of the Montgomery County Democratic Central Committee from District 15. And I come here today because last year, there was a very important bill that failed in the General Assembly, which would expand Medicaid funding to members of the transgender community in the state of Maryland. And many members of this delegation, in fact, co-sponsored the legislation and supported it, which is greatly appreciated, but we really need this bill to pass. Unfortunately, members of the transgender community are often most at risk of poverty, and they are currently the victim of shall we say, a nationwide bullying campaign from major Republican media figures to politicians to even their supporters who protest outside of drag shows with various conspiracies in mind. And so I want to encourage all of you to use this bill as one of your considerations for who we support as the next majority leader, who we push for in various committees. And thank you very much to all of you for your time.
Thank you, and congratulations on your election to the Central Committee. Last up for this panel is Ann Common, and I believe perhaps, Ann, you were assisting Linda Clausen, who we skipped over earlier in terms of her technical difficulties, but please let me know if that's not the case.
That is correct. And apparently my video isn't working. I had my computer fixed recently, and you fix one thing and something else goes wrong.
No worries, we can hear you just fine.
Okay. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. I am a birth mother, a woman who surrendered my son for adoption in the 1980s, and I have lived with the pain of his loss ever since. I'm here to ask you to help in this next legislative session to pass legislation which passed the House in 2020 almost unanimously a week before the legislature shut down for COVID, and died in the Senate in 2021. Many of you may not probably know that when somebody is adopted, they get an amended birth certificate, which says that their adoptive parents are their parents, and the records are sealed. In a roughly 1980, a governor's commission stated that the commission believes that the 32-year experiment in sealing adoption records in this state has outlived its usefulness. Adoptees and birth parents have been trying ever since to bring the law into standard with current standards. And Senator Lee was a wonderful, wonderful advocate for us in 2021, I guess. What we are asking for is that once an adoptee is 18, the adoptee and birth parents may individually ask to receive the adoptee's original birth certificate, the adoptee's amended birth certificate, and records connected to the adoption. The other part of this legislation is that either party may put in a preference form saying they want contact only through an intermediary, or they don't want contact. There is a misunderstanding about this legislation. People see this as pro-adoptee and think that birth parents don't want this legislation. I want this legislation desperately, and hundreds and thousands of birth mothers around this country want legislation like this. Over 10, and I don't know the exact number, states have already implemented legislation like this. The other misunderstanding is that even if you assume birth mothers don't want their children to meet them, want privacy, that this law will hurt them. In fact, as many of you probably know because you use Ancestry or 23andMe, these sites and other ones can be used to find distant relatives, and through those distant blood relatives, your birth parents.
I'd like to ask you to wrap up, please. Your time is up.
I just wanted to say that if you have the birth parent's name, that's a good deal less intrusive than if you start calling people you find on Ancestry and say, oh, do you know my birth mother? Do you know Mrs. Schwartz? Do you know Mrs. King? So this would in fact protect birth parents. Thank you.
Thank you. And also just to clarify, so Linda will not be testifying, is that right?
I think she's trying to testify. I think she's having technical problems.
She's still having technical problems.
I don't know. We're in different homes and different
Okay,
rooms.
my apologies. I thought that perhaps you were in communication with her. Let's try calling on Linda and see if her technical difficulties have been resolved. Linda, if you're still with us and would like to unmute. See, she's still in the room. Let me ask her to unmute. Linda, are you with us?
To unmute, so I unmuted.
There you
Can
go.
you hear
All
me
right, we're
now?
good now. Go ahead. You have your 2 minutes.
All right. Oh, I don't know if I do this in 2 minutes, but one of the things about this is that we're talking about a group of people from 1947 to 2000. From 2000 forward, people who were born in 2000, adoptees at 18 can get their original birth certificate. That just started last year. But it's the older ones, and the older ones are getting older and they're dying. And it's so sad because people talk about birth mothers having been promised confidentiality. They would never promise confidentiality unless it was by a lawyer or a social worker who wanted so much to get the adoption to move forward. They say, oh, don't worry, dear. We'll, everything will be all right. No one will know. But real confidentiality, there's no law, there's no statutes. I'm a social worker. I worked in foster care. I've done many, many adoptions. And I studied the whole background of it. There is nothing that says that a birth mother is promised confidentiality, except for that flip kind of thing that a social worker might have said to her. Also, there's a woman named Elizabeth Samuels who signed up, but she evidently didn't get in. She's a newly retired law professor from the University of Baltimore. She's testified at many of our hearings. And so she didn't get in to speak today. Is there going to be another night? We're talking about 2 nights. I'm not sure if that exists. But she has done so much research over the years in every aspect of this. And I have one of her testimonies from last year or the year before in my hand. If I had a way to send it to you, I think it's something that everyone who doesn't know about these issues and doesn't know about adoptees and their original birth certificates, they want it because it's theirs, not to do anything clever about it. If 2 people, an adoptee and a birth mother, meet because the adoptee gets the original birth certificate and he sees his mother's name and he, so he starts looking, they meet, they talk. They're adults. I mean, some of these people are 60 years old. They talk to each other. They say, all right, and they start a relationship. Or they say, no, this is nice. We did this, but we don't want to carry it further. They know what they need. The government doesn't know what they need. So if we just could get this bill passed, it's been going on and on for years. There have been no troubles in the 14 states that have passed it. There are 10 other states who almost passed. It's like us with a piece of their state. The years are missing, but most of their adoptees can get it. Maine, New York, New Hampshire, Rhode Island. I mean, there's so many. And Senator Lee sponsored our bills for the last 2 years, and with all COVID and everything got so convoluted. I really hope that if there's new people here and they want to learn more about this, we could get a group together and sit and talk if you have questions and you think birth mothers will promise confidentiality, and that's why we can't.
Ask you to wrap up. Your time is expired. If you have a closing sentence, go ahead. Okay, well, thank you for your testimony, and we will circle back with you after the hearing to get that document that you mentioned and to make sure it's included in the written record for tonight's hearing. Yeah, thank you.
Can I just ask a question? Is there going to be another night of people testifying?
Not in this format. Our next two hearings are for local bills that have been introduced, and those will be in December.
All right, so then I really would like to get.
Yes, we'll make sure that gets part of the record. Thank you. All right, any questions for this panel? Not seeing any hands from my colleagues, I will turn this back over to Chair Kramer.
Thank you, Madam Chair and colleagues. This is the final panel of the evening. We have the following people signed up. We have Christine Intagliata, Patty Snee, Michael English, and I see that in the room we have had Elizabeth Joyce with us, and if Elizabeth has some comments that she would like to offer, we would be happy to extend that opportunity to her. So can we begin with Christine Intagliata? Christine, are you with us? All right, I do not see Christine in the room. So why don't we move to Patty Snee? Patty, are you in the room with us? And I'm taking a quick look around and I do not see Patty either. So we will move on from Patty to, I see Michael English is in the room. So Michael, please.
All right, thank you very much, everyone to the delegation for holding this tonight. Talking mainly, but not entirely about housing. We've done a lot on the county level, but only so much that can be done without state involvement. I would definitely encourage, we've seen in California how state involvement on zoning reform and sort of, establishing benchmarks that local governments need to do to allow for more needed housing is important. And I think anything we can do to get that rolling in Maryland would be helpful. We definitely, as much as I support general housing, we need much more affordable housing. Delegate Stewart has a social housing bill that I definitely support. We need more of that. I think we need more funding for affordable housing. To that end, I know recently a bill was passed to allow the income tax to become more progressive, which is good. But in Montgomery County, we are capped at the 3.2%, which means we cannot use that to get more revenue, even if we can have that progressive tax in theory. I know that's a big ask, but I do think that at some point we need to pay more money to have more funding to get more housing that people need. Some renter protections were brought up before. Definitely, many of them are important. Continuing to fund access to council, which we recently did, is going to be important. I'd also like to highlight Delegate Wilkins' just cause eviction bill, which I know didn't make it through committee last year, but both housing supply, rent stabilization, another thing that could happen on both the state and county level. A lot of the gaps that those don't get to, I think very much could be helped by the just cause bill, and we'd like to see that go forward. And the last thing I'd like to highlight, one speaker brought up before, is the Trans Equity Act, or the Trans Health Equity Act. I was frankly very disturbed to see that that was on its way to passing and pretty much disappeared. I would suspect that there is some concern about not overriding a veto. I would hope that a Democratic governor would make that less of an issue now. I don't want to get too into stories, not my own to tell, and respecting privacy, but I've seen firsthand how much gender affirming care helps people, and people who don't have resources, which is many in the trans community, need that help. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike. And Elizabeth Joyce, did you want to share your thoughts with us this evening? I know you have been in the room. I don't believe you had signed up, but I figured I would check to see if there was something that you wanted to offer. Elizabeth going once. All righty then. Colleagues, any questions of the couple of people on this panel who we just heard from? And if not, that concludes this evening's hearing. And I just want to say before I turn it over to Chair Polakovich-Carr, thank you to all of our colleagues who were here tonight. Thank you to all the folks who took time to share your thoughts, concerns, and issues with us. That's what makes this an incredible democracy. And we're going to keep fighting to protect our democracy so that
I think Senator King has her hand up.
Senator King, thank you. Jump on in. What you got?
I just wanted, since I have this group together, I've been working with Sheila Hickson's daughter to put together some kind of a memorial for her. We really decided that Sheila would not really want a quiet church memorial service, that she would be much happier with a little party at Galway Bay in March, and with an Irish band. And so that's what we're going to do on March 14th at Galway Bay. More details to come, but circle that on your calendar. We're going to try and get the House and the Senate to not have sessions that night so that we can honor Sheila. Her daughter's going to bring a big picture, and we are going to toast her with her favorite toast.
Thank you for that, Senator King. Indeed, Montgomery County and the state of Maryland are much better for Sheila Hickson's public service. So
absolutely.
She will certainly be missed. So with that, I say thank you to all of you. My thanks to Matt Harrington and Olivia Rose for all you did to help put together what we were doing tonight. And with that, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, colleagues, for being here this evening. Thank you to everyone who testified before us tonight. Indeed, this was democracy in action, and we so appreciate your input. I will just put a plug in that our next two meetings of the Montgomery County delegation will be for our local and bi-county bill hearings. Those will be on the evenings of December 8th and December 15th at 7 p.m. If any members of the public wish to testify in any of those bills, you can do so and find the information on our delegation website. The information about all those local bills will be posted soon. So again, thank you, everyone.